Chapter 2095. Crack. At that moment, this sound resounded between heaven and earth. There were trillions of humans in the entire land of a human race. They all stopped or walked out of the door, looking at the sky. Nine palace sky. Han Xian suddenly opened his eyes, which were like torches, penetrating through the void and landing on a small village under the lawless sky. Han Xian couldn't help grinning. Brat, you're finally willing to show up. The Snail King was tens of millions of kilometers away from the land of the human race. However, he felt that there was the power of the Great Way gathering towards the settlement of the outer domain. Immediately, the old snail realized that something was wrong. It was impossible for a cultivator in the Pioneer Sea realm to make such a big noise. Even when he split open the sky, the noise was much smaller than this. Is Han Fei going to split open the sky? In the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, Luo Xiaobai was cultivating. However, in the place where she was cultivating, a water droplet suspended on a bluestone jade platform suddenly began to vibrate. Hearing the sound in the sky and seeing the movement of the infinity water, Luo Xiaobai was immediately shocked. 100 years ago, Jiuyin Ling opened the sea. 100 years later, you're finally going to split open the sky? Swish, the infinity water turned into a long water blade and disappeared into the void. Luo Xiaobai also disappeared. At that moment, the Tao and Tribulation clouds and the surrounding thousands of kilometers all gathered towards the Bright Moon Village. In the Bright Moon Village, countless people shouted, "Look, something happened to the old village leader's house. Go and help." Oh no, it's the old village leader's house. What did the old village leader do? Why is there such a big noise? There were middle-aged, young, and even old men, all running wildly. During the years when Han Fei was the village leader, he had helped countless people in the Bright Moon Village and never asked for anything in return. He only felt that it was what a village leader should do. Therefore, when everyone saw the yard where Han Fei's house was located, the spiritual energy was chaotic, and even a pillar of light appeared. They all rushed there. Some people even thought that Han Fei must have encountered some danger. Some carried sticks, some carried fishing rods, some held double knives, and some carried copper hammers. They all rushed to Han Fei's house in a formidable array. However, the more they charged, the more alarmed they became. It was as if something was wrong. In an instant, the spiritual energy in Bright Moon Village became 10 times, 100 times denser. Quite a few people had managed to make a breakthrough as soon as they stepped out of their houses and took in a mouthful of spiritual energy. They had no choice but to sit down cross-legged and focus on their breakthrough. However, there were still quite a number of people who rushed to Han Fei's house. However, these people were more than a kilometer away and could no longer go any further. The spirit chi here was simply too dense. It was so dense that even if they didn't take the initiative to absorb the spirit chi, there would still be a huge amount of spirit chi pouring into their bodies. The current village chief roared, "All of you, hold your breath and retreat. Retreat. Don't absorb too much spiritual energy, or your bodies will explode." Other than the village chief, many people were shouting, "Not good. Retreat quickly. The spiritual energy is crazily pouring into my body. Everyone, retreat quickly. This place is dangerous. The spiritual energy is exploding. There's too much of it. We can't absorb it all. If you want to live, then don't rush forward." The village chief, who had been in the middle of issuing orders, was now trembling. Suddenly, he realized just who exactly was this old village chief. If he was just a hidden fisher, even if he ascended to the sky, how could he burst out such a huge amount of spiritual energy? This was no longer spiritual energy, but spiritual pressure. Crack, the seal on Han Fei's body was fully opened, and invisible waves of air shook out. If this force was allowed to sweep in all directions, even if Han Fei did it unintentionally, no one in the Bright Moon Village could survive. Swish, Xia Xiaochan had already come to the outside of the courtyard, standing in the air. She waved one hand, and an invisible barrier blocked a round of terrifying power impact. But even the shock waves formed by the energy and seals shook countless people back and even fell. Someone shouted, "Look, it's Granny Xia." An old man was surprised. Isn't that the old village chief's wife? Didn't they say that her lifespan had come to an end? Who the F asterisk CK said that? No, Granny Xia is just a hidden fisher. How can she stand in the air? Someone was shocked. She hid her strength. The old village chief and Granny Xia must have hidden their strength. Those who can stand in the air are at least law enforcers. Huh. Does a law enforcer have the ability to form an invisible barrier with a push of his hand and block such a huge impact? Swish, at this moment, two figures appeared quietly. Yin said eagerly, "Sister-in-law, is it really you?" "My brother." Xia Xiaochan nodded. "I see." Xia Xiaochan's words were simple, but Yin was shocked. She knew that her brother was only the same age as her. In just a few hundred years, he was about to step into the sky-opening realm. Below, the village chief was dumbfounded. He trembled and said, "Emperor Xian." "Greetings, Emperor Xian." After the unification of the human race, many of the kings in the human world had statues. Even those who didn't have statues had pictures of them. And Han Xian, the emperor of the human race, who didn't know him? Who wouldn't know? Who wouldn't know? Clang, clang, the sticks, fishing rods, hammers, and sabers in the hands of the villagers who came here to save the day all fell to the ground. "Greetings, Emperor Xian." "Greetings, Emperor Xian." The black mass of people all knelt down. The villagers of the Bright Moon Village were stunned. How much of an honor was it to see Emperor Xian? However, Emperor Xian was obviously here for the old village chief. Who was the old village chief? How could he be so powerful? But then they saw the immortal master of the Wujin heaven, Li Yingtian, the master of the flying feather heaven, Xieyu, and the storm dragon Eagle King. Immediately afterward, the kings of the immortal palace in the outer domain of the human race arrived. There was even a huge phantom in the sky, spanning more than 800 kilometers. It was a huge snail. Who else could it be but the emperor of the giant beast clan? The villagers of the Bright Moon Village were all ordinary people. They had never seen this before. All the kings and emperors had come in person. All the kings and venerables had arrived. Swish, a drop of water broke through the void, and with a walla sound, it scattered into a sky full of saber shadows. The small courtyard around Han Fei began to spin. At this moment, the infinity water returned, and part of Han Fei's was descending into his origin sea. The origin sea has never existed for the sake of imitation. It's the origin of all things. It's not about stuffing things into it. It's about nurturing and giving birth to all creatures. With a thought from Han Fei, the origin sea of more than 100,000 kilometers, the endless resources, and the vast energy collapsed. The ultra-quality spiritual stones, the heavenly fault star tree that he took from the Grand Purity Palace, the materials he saved, the remains of the sea expanding realm, the essence of the earth veins. Everything collapsed with a thought from Han Fei. At this moment, the time chain was upgraded automatically. Han Fei didn't even blink when 100,000 strands of chaotic energy were consumed. The origin sea that Han Fei had spent countless efforts to build, which could be said to be the most luxurious in the history of the sea world, turned into a land of billowing smoke and dust at this moment. Han Fei shouted, "Mountains and rivers are rebuilt. Everything returns to its origin. The sun and the moon rotate, the yin and the yang of the world." In this land of ruins, because the power was too chaotic, the earth veins were squeezing. Han Fei raised his eyes, and the sky-opening technique was right in front of him. When he saw the incantations all over the sky, he seemed to understand something. Outside, Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes. When he saw so many people watching, he didn't feel anything. She heard him shout, "Little girl." After living together for so many years, the two of them could easily read each other's minds. Xia Xiaochan's battle suit appeared, her face was restored, and her hair was black. She stepped on the void. As Xia Xiaochan stretched out her hand, the metamorphosis water appeared. Li Yingtian's pupils constricted. Is she going to? And Han Fei's burly village leader appearance also changed at this moment, returning to his old appearance. He waved his hand, and the infinity water was held in his hand. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan held hands and threw out the water drops in their hands at the same time. The infinity water and the chaotic original water intertwined like two dragons and soared into the sky. Han Fei shouted, "My name is Han Fei. I entered the heavenless sky by mistake and entered the time gap of the heavenly desolate city." Li Huang, the city lord, fought against the sea demons for more than 200 years. At that time, the heavenly desolate city was no more than 1,000 kilometers long and had a population of no more than 2 million. In the end, in the time gap, Li Huang led the 2 million people in the city to fight to the death. I promised him that one day I would rebuild the heavenly desolate city and let the name of Li Huang return to the heavenly palace. Rise! Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan turned into giant void hands at the same time, grabbing two huge mountains that stretched for thousands of kilometers from the sea. As early as when Han Fei came to the heavenless sky, he had already started preparing. During the 100 years he lived here with Xia Xiaochan, their main task was to build this heavenly desolate city. Today, the city appeared. At that moment, countless experts from all directions witnessed the birth of a city with their own eyes, and their eyes were full of astonishment. At the same time, there was also admiration. As the two floating islands were connected, countless arrays were imprinted in the void in all directions. And a large number of black incantations on Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan turned into countless black smoke arrays, imprinting on the giant city. The onlookers were all shocked. Zhang Xuanyu couldn't speak for a long time. When he opened his mouth, he exclaimed, "We are both sea creators." Chapter 2096. Li Yingtian didn't expect that the heavenly desolate city would be established in this way. Han Fei had even prepared the floating island right under his nose. It could be seen how much of a failure he was as the master of the immortal palace. He was afraid that Li Huang's name would be on par with his in the future. Of course, while Li Yingtian was helpless, he was actually a little delighted. It seemed that Han Fei was going to split open the sky. Han Fei's influence in the human race was unprecedented. The floating island he built with his own hands would be a place that tens of thousands of people would scramble to live in. At least, he wouldn't have to worry about the basic population of the shadowless heaven in the future. As the master of the immortal palace, what he feared most was that there were only a few people in the land under his rule. The result of no one was that it was difficult to produce strong masters. If there were no strong masters in the immortal palace, how could it be called the immortal palace? Besides, if there were no people under his rule, who would provide him with the power of faith? Therefore, even a master of the immortal palace had a huge demand for people. When there were no more black runes appearing in Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan's bodies, they knew that Li Huang's curse had been lifted. No matter how strong Li Huang was, that was the curse he planted on them with the power of a city. It was not impossible for them to forcibly break these curses. However, they could break these curses by force, but they couldn't solve the karma of their promise to Li Huang. This must be a knot in their hearts. Therefore, at this moment, the heavenly desolate city was being rebuilt, and Han Fei could split open the sky smoothly. Xia Xiaochan had mixed feelings. She knew that Han Fei would comprehend the last opportunity to split open the sky sooner or later. She just didn't expect it to be so fast. It would take others tens of thousands of years, or at least thousands of years to comprehend it. But Han Fei comprehended it in a mere 200 years. Even if time could be accelerated in his origin sea, he hadn't entered it many times over the years. Above the main city of the Feather Heaven, countless humans were looking forward to it. A small half of these people were former residents of a shadowless heaven, but they had been living in the Feather Heaven for a long time. However, in their hearts, they knew that the shadowless heaven was their root. The point was that Han Fei, the human king, suddenly reappeared. Even children as young as a few years old were surprised and shouted the human king's name. A youngster said, "Father, is Han Fei the name of the human king?" The middle-aged man nodded and said, "Of course. 200 years ago, the human king led the human king's army and attacked the 100-demon tribe. He killed the emperor and king. In a single day, he killed almost all the experts of the 100-demon tribe. That kind of achievement TSK. In the past 100,000 years, it was unprecedented. A child shouted, "Has the king of heroes and men returned?" The human king has returned and is once again at the peak of the human race. As everyone shouted in unison, they saw two huge floating islands breaking through the void. Boom! The mountains intersected and multicolored light shone brightly. Spiritual energy surged from all directions. Han Fei glanced at Xia Xiaochan. Girl. Seeing that Han Fei flashed to the main city of the heavenly desolation city, Xia Xiaochan knew that Han Fei was going to undergo a tribulation here. With the power of the tribulation, he could reshape the heavenly desolation city on a deeper level. It could be predicted that as long as the heavenly desolation city could survive this heavenly tribulation, there would at least be some experts born in the city in the future. At this moment, Han Fei's heavenly tribulation had just gathered. Because the gathering range was very large, the speed of the heavenly tribulation wasn't very fast. Han Fei's voice, like a thunderclap, resounded in the entire human world. My name is Han Fei. I've been cultivating for more than 300 years. I've killed countless enemies, dozens of kings, and 3 emperors. I call myself a king. Today, I'm a human emperor. Rumble. When Han Fei said, "I'm the human emperor," thunder rumbled in the sky, as if showing a very disapproving attitude toward this statement. Han Fei snorted and continued, "I'm the human emperor, and I'll create a new world for the human race." Boom! The sky exploded. This time, the mysterious power of heaven and earth descended, as if to suppress Han Fei. However, Han Fei's momentum was also constantly rising. The mighty power from all directions was pouring into Han Fei's body. At the same time, Han Fei's words made countless people's hearts explode and their blood boil. Although he hadn't appeared for 200 years, once he reappeared, countless people couldn't help but admire and worship him. After all, Han Fei's story had been spread throughout the entire Outer Sea. He was the only hero since the Outer Sea established the human world. Because of Han Fei, the current situation of the human world was established. Therefore, when Han Fei said he would create a new world for the human race, no matter how sudden it was, countless people were convinced and full of expectations. At this moment, the heavenly Tao rumbled, the kings were shocked, and all the venerable realm experts were moved. They were already convinced by someone who could say this. Han Xian looked solemn and clenched his fists. The path this brat is going to take is a bit ruthless. The happiest one was actually Emperor Snail, who thought that Han Fei still had the giant beast incarnation in the giant beast clan. The stronger the human race, the stronger Han Fei himself, and the stronger the human race, the easier the future of the giant beast clan would be. After all, the giant beast clan had always been the target of others. Without the Mist Sea, the giant beast clan would probably have to compete with the 100 demons, the underwater human race, and even the human race. Otherwise, they would become materials in the hands of others. Han Fei stepped in the air and pointed to the sky. As the human emperor, I should settle down for the human race. As the human emperor, I should preach and enlighten all living beings. As the human emperor, I will cross the sea east and return to all races. As the human emperor, if the heavens stop me, I will create a new world. Rumble, it seemed that even the heavenly Tao here couldn't stand it anymore. The heavenly tribulation hadn't finished gathering yet, but a heavenly tribulation struck down with a boom. It was very similar to Jiuyin Ling's heavenly tribulation. It was purple at the beginning. When a bolt of lightning struck down heavily, Han Fei opened his arms and let the heavenly tribulation baptize him. Han Fei's flesh and blood were like dry earth that needed to be moistened by rain. Han Fei grinned and looked straight at the vast heavenly tribulation. The Tao of the human emperor was not a Tao, but a Tao heart. Just as Jiuyin Ling said, he had set foot on this Tao from the very beginning, and today he had gone further and further on this Tao. Since he had already embarked on this path, why should he be afraid to bear this pressure? Therefore, his Tao heart was enough to open the sky today. As for the opportunity to open the sky, it was naturally to comprehend the true meaning of returning to essence. When the first bolt of lightning struck, Han Fei's bones began to shine. His golden jade bones had actually reached 99% as early as more than 50 years ago. However, for some reason, there was still the last bit left. No matter how hard his power of will surged, he couldn't break through. But at this moment, there were finally signs of loosening. Since the first heavenly tribulation had arrived, the next lightning would naturally condense faster. However, this time, Han Fei had no resources to use. Because all his resources had been shattered and turned into the origin of the origin sea, they had returned to the origin and could not be used. Therefore, Han Fei could only resist these 9 heavenly tribulations. Rumble. The purple lightning struck, and the lightning on Han Fei's body twisted and crackled. Only those who had gone through the heaven-opening tribulation knew that every heavenly tribulation in the heaven-opening realm was a transformation. Han Fei's flesh, skin, bones, senses, and soul were all strengthening rapidly. Part of the power of the heavenly tribulation was absorbed into Han Fei's origin sea, trying to continue to expand it. However, the power of the heavenly tribulation didn't seem to have much effect on the expansion of the origin sea. Fortunately, Han Fei let the heavenly tribulation temper his body. The third, the fourth. When the 5th heavenly tribulation came, Han Fei suddenly felt that his golden jade bones had finally broken through the last barrier and reached phenomenal success. It seemed that the heavenly tribulation also realized that something was wrong with Han Fei. When the 6th lightning appeared, Han Fei felt a large amount of immortal spiritual energy, but it was not as gentle as the immortal spiritual energy he refined. This immortal spiritual energy was very violent. In addition, Han Fei saw a purple mist sprinkling down from the sky. Primordial purple chi. Han Fei took a deep breath. Only in the heaven-opening realm would this primordial purple chi appear for a short while. Therefore, Han Fei suddenly leaped into the primordial purple chi. Han Fei opened his mouth, and a terrifying suction force burst out. The entire 6th heavenly tribulation was directly swallowed by Han Fei. A massive amount of primordial purple chi was also swallowed by Han Fei. Down below, Lu Rinquang exclaimed, "Really? He can still eat such a heavenly tribulation?" Zhang Xuanyu mumbled, "Amazing, amazing, too amazing." Han Xian was shocked. He didn't know how Han Guanshu and Jiang Linxian had such a son. The human race was really on the rise. Even the Snail King had never seen such a heavenly tribulation. He said, "This kid's physique is probably comparable to mine, isn't it?" What the Snail King said was actually very shocking. He was carrying a snail shell on his back. Didn't it mean that Han Fei's physique was comparable to his when he was carrying a snail shell? Chapter 2097. At first, Han Fei didn't know what the primordial purple chi meant. However, when the primordial purple chi entered his body, Han Fei immediately felt that his bloodline was trembling. There seemed to be a powerful force in his bloodline that wanted to break free. Then, his divine soul seemed to welcome a heart-piercing chill, and the strength of his divine soul kept increasing. However, the primordial purple chi he absorbed was limited. He could cultivate his bloodline and divine soul by himself, but the opening of the origin sea was a big problem. Therefore, Han Fei poured almost 90% of the primordial purple chi into the origin sea. Once he was in the origin sea, he had the right to control it. With a thought, the primordial purple chi surged towards the edge of the origin sea. Buzz, 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 a lot of darkness was illuminated. Because time was accelerated in the origin sea, Han Fei had enough time to see how the primordial purple chi opened up the origin sea. It seemed that the two forces were canceling each other out. The origin sea created by the 6th heavenly tribulation broke through more than 5,000 kilometers of the origin sea, making his origin sea about 107,000 kilometers. This shocked Han Fei. Bei Luochen and Shi Pahuang's origin sea both covered more than 200,000 kilometers. It seemed that it would be difficult for him to catch up with them with the primordial purple chi in one go. but made sense. These people had spent tens of thousands of years to open up the origin sea, while he had only spent a few seconds. Han Fei had to admit that he was smaller than them. At this time, Han Fei's physique was already extremely strong, and his golden jade bone had reached the phenomenal success level in the heavenly tribulation. Therefore, Han Fei withstood the 6 consecutive heavenly tribulations and even took one of them. Of course, after eating this heavenly tribulation, even though Han Fei's internal organs were strong, he was scorched and a lot of impurities were flowing out of his body. These impurities were shining with golden light and had a strong fragrance. It was hard for ordinary people to understand. How could there be such pure impurities in the world? From the 6th heavenly tribulation onwards, it seemed that every heavenly tribulation was accompanied by a large amount of primordial purple chi, and there was more and more of it. However, in the origin sea, the darkness was receding, and another primordial purple chi descended, opening up a space of about 8,000 kilometers. The primordial purple chi, created by the 8th heavenly tribulation, helped Han Fei open up more than 12,000 kilometers of space. When the last heavenly tribulation came, Han Fei's body was overflowing with light. Han Fei already had a plan. Although the space opened up by the primordial purple gas was gradually expanding, even if the last bit of primordial purple gas was used to open up the origin sea, it would only be a little more than 140,000 kilometers at most, not 150,000 kilometers. Han Fei thought to himself, if that's the case, I might as well try to forcibly contain the last primordial purple chi. So, under the shocked gazes of Han Xian and the Emperor Snail, Han Fei swallowed the heavenly tribulation again. Crack, 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 with a crackling sound. Dense cracks appeared on the surface of Han Fei's body. Han Fei forcibly locked the power of the heavenly tribulation and the primordial energy, trying to merge them into his body. When even his eyes were emitting purple light, Han Fei felt that his body couldn't take it anymore. So he absorbed part of the primordial purple chi into his origin sea. Thousands of kilometers of tribulation clouds turned into 9 heavenly tribulations, locking Han Fei in them. But there was nothing he could do. At this moment, the tribulation clouds dissipated and a holy pillar of light descended from the sky. This was the heavenly awakening divine technique. The cracks all over Han Fei's body were being repaired rapidly. Clatter, crack, crack. Han Fei twisted his body slightly, and like setting off firecrackers, his bones made crisp sounds like metal colliding. At that moment, when Han Fei opened his eyes, he saw that in addition to spiritual energy, there were also wisps of gray mist particles, which was the chaotic chi. With a slight movement of his perception, the immortal palaces and billions of humans in the outer sea all appeared in his perception. He could hear countless voices at the same time. Someone shouted, "Look, the heavenly tribulation is gone. Has the human king passed the heavenly tribulation successfully? It should be, right? This is too terrifying. I don't even know where the human king passed the heavenly tribulation. Why are the tribulation clouds here? Bah, he's the human king now. How can a mere heavenly tribulation do anything to him?" Han Fei could see the faces of countless people with a single thought, and their words drilled into his mind like streams. Han Fei saw some familiar faces, such as Wang Dashui, who protected the academy, who was cultivating in various places, Juyin Ling, who was on the sea more than 300,000 kilometers away, and Little Fish, who was sitting on a big tree, holding his chin and watching the heavenly tribulation carefully. This was the basic operation of an expert with 5 senses and 6 senses. When Han Fei looked at the kings again, he felt that he could vaguely feel the power flowing in their bodies. He could tell their strength almost a glance. Han Fei also sensed the hidden power of Han Xian and the Emperor of Snails, which was very powerful. However, for himself, he had a feeling that he could fight them and wouldn't lose at all. When Han Fei glanced at some venerables, for some reason, his eyes were purple. Although he couldn't see through their Tao, he could vaguely feel it. At this moment, Han Fei's heavenly tribulation wasn't completely over. It had just ended. He just glanced at the world in the blink of an eye. In fact, in his origin sea, the sky was cracking. Han Fei felt that the great Tao of yin and yang were growing and melting into the origin sea. After the sky opened, Han Fei saw a starry sky. He was actually very shocked. The crack in the sky seemed to be grafted with an endless galaxy. He didn't know whether it was connected to reality or something else. Besides, Han Fei saw that in the endless galaxy, there seemed to be two abnormally shining big stars, which seemed to be different from everything else. There seemed to be a consciousness looking at him. The old turtle said, "That's the star sea. The sky of the heaven opening state is connected to the star sea, and the star sea can be understood as the starry universe you see in the outside world. However, it is not connected to the one above your head, but to an unknown star sea. The star sea and the soul sea actually have the same effect. In reality, if there are many heaven-opening state cultivators who are very close to each other, their consciousness can enter the star sea and feel each other. You can even try to enter the star sea and directly enter someone else's origin sea through the star sea to cut off their Tao. However, no matter how close the two star seas are, they can't be reached in a short time. The most important thing is that there may be star behemoths in the star sea. They are powerful creatures that can devour your consciousness and origin sea." The old turtle had never told him this before. However, if he had told him before, Han Fei probably wouldn't have understood it. But now, he had opened the sky and could directly observe the star sea. Therefore, it was easy to understand when he explained it. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't easily touch the star sea now. After all, he hadn't officially finished the process of opening the sky. In Han Fei's origin sea, the endless resources that had long collapsed and were in a chaotic state began to precipitate at this moment. Some clear air floated in the sky, and some turbid air sank to the ground. The earth veins were compressed, forming mountains and rivers. The spiritual spring was divided, part of which turned into wind and thunder, and part of which condensed into earth springs. Such a scene was out of Han Fei's control, and spontaneously appeared the scene of everything returning to the origin. When all this settled down, Han Fei's origin sea no longer needed to be arranged by himself, but the natural landform and ecology. However, perhaps all of his resources had become the foundation of the origin sea. When the primal chaos became clear, the landscape would still be barren and desolate. Compared to his origin sea, which looked like a fairyland, it was worlds apart in terms of appearance. However, even this barren land was slowly generating the aura of the Great Way. It was continuous generation. Han Fei had a feeling that when the aura of the Great Way was generated enough, there would be a qualitative change, which would help him better deduce this way and go deeper into the Great Way. What was even more amazing was that in the state of everything returning to the origin, his green jade stone bridge seemed to have some kind of connection with the origin sea, and it seemed that all the great ways that he had mastered were slowly generating the aura of the Great Way. Wow, at this moment, Han Fei knew that the sky splitting technique had been completed. Next, it was time to explore and continue to develop the sky splitting technique. Han Fei couldn't help but look at his information. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 100, sky splitting technique. C10,000 family tree, 360201, immortal spiritual energy, 40. Origin C greater than 130,000 kilometers, spiritual power, 1922569, perception range, 2 million kilometers, power, 112. 6842 waves, first spiritual heritage, primordial vein. Second spiritual heritage, vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit, swallowing fish, level 92. Second spiritual beast, emperor sparrow, level 98, main art time. Fishing, level 8 of void fishing, emperor level, divine quality. When Han Fei saw this information, even though he had slaughtered several strong enemies, he couldn't help but feel scared. At the beginning of the sky-splitting technique, his power had reached 12 million waves, which had doubled. Although his spiritual power hadn't doubled, it had increased by nearly 700,000 points. Besides, the higher the level of his soul, the stronger it was. Han Fei had expected that the chaotic energy would be replaced by the immortal spiritual energy. The existence of the chaotic energy seemed to be just for the origin sea. It was more like a transition of energy. His bloodline had increased by about 300,000 ranks. This should be the leap of life level after the sky splitting technique. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the bloodline devouring. What he saw shocked him. C10,000 family tree 296202223 owner 360201 nearby bloodlines time dragon carp twin Enyang spirit swallowing fish emperor sparrow recommended bloodlines hexagon starfish time dragon carp golden crow divine blood good heavens. There were 3 bloodlines that could be devoured at once. But Han Fei was only excited for a moment, and then he was relieved. These 3 bloodlines appeared together. It could be seen that they were relatively close. It was very likely that if he devoured one, he wouldn't be able to devour the other 2. As for why the bloodline of the time dragon carp was still there, wasn't it easy for him to get some essence blood when little time was around? However, he still needed to think about which bloodline to devour. Chapter 2098. In Bright Moon Village, almost all of the villagers were prostrating on the ground. Old village chief, human king. Oh no, human sovereign? This was the biggest joke in the history of the human race. Han Fei actually came to a small place like theirs to be the village chief, and lived here for more than 100 years. Who would have thought of this? Everyone was both shocked and overjoyed. Many people whispered to the people beside them, "You may not believe it, but the old village chief and I, I played fish dragon cards with human emperor. Can you believe it?" Someone replied, "The human emperor personally taught my son. How is he compared to you?" Someone said, "I've gone to the imperial family's vegetable fields to pull vegetables. Let me ask you, who else?" Someone sighed, "I've introduced dozens of people to the human emperor, but he rejected all of them. I'm really a pig brain. How can it be my turn to introduce people to the human emperor?" For a moment, countless people looked at that person as if they were looking at an idiot. They thought to themselves, "You're really brave. Aren't you afraid that the person in the royal family will slap you to death?" Someone couldn't help but ask, if the old village chief is a human emperor, then what about Granny Xia? Gulp. Someone took a deep breath and said, "According to the legends, the wife of the human emperor is the princess of the merfolk royal family." Many girls were scared. In the past, when Han Fei married a wife, many girls gave Xia Xiaochan a cold shoulder. Now that they thought about it, how lucky they were to still be alive. As long as someone glared at him, he would probably be dead, right? Han Fei was not in a hurry to choose bloodlines. Many people were still waiting. Han Fei opened his eyes slightly, and with a blast of air, his battle suit shone and his long hair fluttered. Immediately, all the kings cheered. Congratulations to the human emperor for opening the sky. Congratulations to the human emperor for opening the sky. Han Xian's voice traveled into the world, his voice like thunder. Congratulations to the human sovereign for opening the sky. Han Xian's shout caused the entire world to seethe with excitement. Roar, I already said that Lord Sovereign Personage would definitely be able to split open the sky. Now, you should be addressing him as Human Sovereign Personage instead. This is the true return of King. This is the true Emperor of the human race. Huh. Now, our human race actually has 2 heaven-opening experts. With our strength, let's see how the inner region will look down on us. Someone sneered, "The inner region is already too busy to take care of itself." With a sword sovereign overseeing things, how would the Grand Pure One and Limitless dare to act rashly? Today, when a human sovereign opens the sky, we shall drink for 3 days. Great news. This is truly great news for the human race. Ever since the outer realms humans gathered together, heroes have emerged in large numbers. Now, the human emperor wants to preach to the world. How exaggerated is that? Someone lamented, "If we could unify the inner region, that would be the foundation for the human race's prosperity." With the human king's ruthless methods, how could he let go of the Grand Pure One? Zhang Xuanyu and the others were about to rush over, but Luo Xiaobai shouted, "Don't move." Huh? Emperor Snail. He seems to be planning something. Up in the sky, Han Fei directly used the Dharma world. As soon as he used it, he became 330,000 zhang tall, turning into a giant that could prop up the heavens. Void descent. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A golden giant could be seen standing proudly in the sky above all the major cities in the outer region of the human race. Han Fei roared, "As the human emperor, I should preach to the world. Today, I'm going to preach." Luo Xiaobai and the others looked at each other. Han Fei was going to give another lecture. Unlike before, Han Fei was already a heaven-opening state powerhouse this time. Now that Han Fei was going to preach, no one knew what kind of grand event would happen. Han Fei's voice was thunderous. What I'm going to talk about is the Taoist heart. It wasn't the first time that Han Fei preached, so he was very familiar with it. When Han Fei spoke about the so-called Taoist heart, his words seemed to have become chaotic, immortal music, which mortals couldn't understand at all. Some people were at a loss and looked at the sky. Some people fell into a daze, as if they were having an epiphany. Someone's aura surged and seemed to be preparing for a breakthrough. Anyway, at this moment, trillions of humans were sitting cross-legged, dumbfounded. Even those who didn't understand at all tried to listen to what Han Fei was saying. As they listened, they didn't know anything. Even Luo Xiaobai and the others didn't understand anything, but for some reason, they felt that they had benefited a lot. Han Fei's voice was leisurely, shaking the world. The major cities, villages, and surrounding spiritual energy storms swept over. Some people had their own reserved resources and subconsciously used them. Some people didn't have reserved resources and relied on the gathering of spiritual energy between heaven and earth. Anyway, on this day, in the entire human race, at least hundreds of millions of people had made breakthroughs. Even if they didn't, their strength had greatly improved. Many people woke up from the chaos and exclaimed, "Ah, I've become a hidden fisher. I've been stuck at this level for more than 8 years." Some people and countless children were ecstatic. "I've become a fishing master. I've also become a fishing master. I've broken through 3 realms. I was only 7 years old. My son has broken through 2 realms in 1 day. He's really a genius." Some people directly enforced the law as soon as they woke up, feeling that they couldn't suppress it. Some people even directly comprehended and broke through to the venerable realm. According to incomplete statistics, on this day, the total number of people who reached the venerable realm in the major immortal palaces reached an astonishing 3,000. On average, more than 100 people reached the venerable realm in each immortal palace. At the moment these people completed their breakthroughs, their eyes were fanatical and their hearts were filled with excitement. This was the way of the human emperor. This was the way of the human emperor. This was the way of the human emperor. At this moment, Han Fei walked towards Han Xian and the others while feeling the crazy influx of power of hope. It was too much. In the past, when only the yin-yang heaven provided him with power of hope, Han Fei still needed to show off in every battle so that people could provide him with power of hope. Now, after a wave of preaching, he received 10 times or even 100 times more power of hope than the people of the yin-yang heaven could provide. This laid a good foundation for him from the very beginning. At this moment, Zhang Xuanyu rushed up and punched Han Fei on the shoulder. "Good boy, after 200 years of silence, you've finally opened the sky. You've really shown off in front of the entire human race." Han Fei grinned. "I'm not showing off. This is my path." Luo Xiaobai asked, "The path of the human emperor? This isn't an easy path. We don't even know where the myriad races are." Luren Kuang asked, "Fei Fei, how does it feel to open the sky?" Han Fei chuckled. "It's very strong. Even if I haven't stabilized it yet, I feel that I can cut through the sea expansion stage with a casual slash. Brother, congratulations." Han Einer was also proud. In the past 200 years, Einer was the only one who worried about Han Fei except for Luo Xiaobai and the others. Han Fei touched Einer's head. "I'm lucky. How could Bei Luochen kill me? But for you, there's a faint power escaping. I'm afraid you're preparing for the tribulation, right?" Han Fei knew that Ein-Er's talent shouldn't be worse than his. From a 9-tailed immortal that Ein-Er awakened, he knew that she was also an extremely powerful spiritual beast. Before he had a chance to chat with Ymir, Han Yu couldn't help but say, "Congratulations on opening the sky, Human Emperor. Now the human race can finally attack the inner area." Han Fei glanced at Han Yu, thinking that this guy was really smart, but considering that he had already turned over a new leaf, he didn't argue with him. Han Xian patted Han Fei on the shoulder. "Good boy. Now the Han family has opened the sky twice. If your father and mother knew this, they would definitely be relieved." Han Fei thought to himself, "Old Han once said that if I don't open the sky, I can't get involved in their affairs. Now that I've opened the sky, I wonder if I can get involved in it?" Han Fei looked at Xia Xiaochan, and with a thought, he came to her. "Girl." Zhang Xuanyu nodded. "Zhang Xuanyu, I knew it. Even if you don't look for us, you should look for Xia Xiaochan. It seems that you've been together for a long time, haven't you?" Han Fei smiled and said, 100 years. Luo Xiaobai was slightly relieved. Zhuing Ling's Dao was really amazing. She even wondered if Han Fei was in a relationship with Zhuing Ling. Han Xian asked, "Han Fei, when are we going to the inner area? It's imperative for the human race to be unified. Now there are many experts on our side. When you stabilize your cultivation, you could decide when to go. It's up to you." Han Fei smiled. "For now, there's no hurry." Huh? Even Luo Xiaobai was stunned. In fact, many people have been waiting for this day. Since the day of Zhuing Ling's tribulation, many people knew that Han Fei wasn't dead. Since Han Fei didn't die, they all thought that the day when Han Fei returned would be the day when the inner area was unified. However, they never expected that Han Fei would say there was no hurry at this moment. Seeing that everyone was puzzled, Han Fei said, "It's not too late to go to the inner area after my son is born." "Huh?" Luo Xiaobai asked. "What?" Zhang Xuanyu said, "Wow. Wait, haven't you been comprehending Dao for the past 100 years? Why did you have a child?" Zhang Xuanyu couldn't help but glance at Xia Xiaochan's belly, and the latter glared back. "What are you looking at? I'll gouge your eyes out if you keep looking." Zhang Xuanyu shivered. Compared with Xia Xiaochan, Yixian was much better. On the contrary, Han Xian's breath was unstable, and his mouth cracked. "Really? A child of the Han family? Ha ha. The stronger you are, the lower the probability of having a child. You can actually conceive a child before the sky is opened." "Good, very good. Very good. There's no hurry to attack the inner area. It doesn't matter if we wait another 100 years for He Dao Yuan." However, Xia Xiaochan said, "No, He Dao Yuan will be a hidden danger after all. Hundreds of years ago, when I was in the mermaid royal family, I heard from my mother that He Dao Yuan was afraid of going to extremes. It's inevitable that he won't become the next Sherpa Huang. So, He Dao Yuan must be killed as soon as possible. After all, I've just been pregnant. Looking at the progress, I'm afraid it will take a long time for me to give birth to him." Han Fei's face immediately became serious. "Can you wait 100 years? Xia Xiaochan asked. "What about your way of the human emperor? Just to wait for a child, He Dao Yuan? Since we've become mortal enemies, if you give him a chance now, once he learns that I'm pregnant, who knows if he will be crazy enough to kill me?" Han Fei's heart trembled. "That's true. In this case, kings, please prepare your forces. When I stabilize my cultivation and come out of seclusion, the human army will unify the inner area." Chapter 2099. Han Fei split open the sky with great momentum, and all the people prayed. After the sky was split open, countless people from the various great immortal palaces tried to immigrate to the lawless sky. Li Yingtian was the one who had a headache, so Han Fei didn't care about it. Han Fei's former residence in the Bright Moon Village couldn't be lived there anymore. This place was also called the Mortal Emperor's Residence, and it was the place where the Mortal Emperor comprehended the Tao. Bright Moon Village was visited by cultivators every day because everyone felt that the place where Ren Huang comprehended the way must have some residual way rhythm. If they were to comprehend the Tao here, wouldn't their future be bright? In just 7 or 8 days. There was actually someone who comprehended the Tao near the human emperor's residence and became a venerable in one go. This news spread very quickly, which further confirmed the saying that one could comprehend the Tao in the human emperor residence. For a time, the Bright Moon Village became a place of enlightenment for various experts. The village chief of Bright Moon Village trembled with fear every day. These are all big shots. However, no one dared to be disrespectful to the village chief because the village chief kept saying, "I was promoted by the human emperor. I drank with the human emperor and played cards with him. We even became good friends." Other than the village chief, many of the villagers of Bright Moon Village had boasted about how they had gone to sea together, how they had fished together, and how they had cooked together. There were even children who claimed that the human emperor had personally taught them. In any case, once these words were spoken, the big shots who came to Bright Moon Village would not dare to be rude to the villagers. Of course, they couldn't stay in human emperor's residence either. This was an order given by the village chief. No matter how powerful one's background was, as long as one dared to stay in human emperor's residence and destroy things there, he would go find the human emperor to punish them. Needless to say, when the village chief said those harsh words, a large number of people were indeed intimidated. However, the village chief did not know that there were often people who secretly moved in. In any case, he did not know, and the village chief would not tell him. He didn't know if it was because of Han Fei's sermons, but in just a month, there were as many as 7 or 8 Tao seekers around the human emperor's residence. Even if Han Fei explained that it had nothing to do with the human emperor's residence, no one would believe him. There was an endless stream of people who came to comprehend the Tao. This led to a great change in Bright Moon's industry, and all kinds of famous inns were opened. There was an inn with a sign saying, "Human Emperor's Residence," and then pushed out a display shelf. The fish that the human emperor and I boasted about. There were even youths who set up stalls to collect fees. They relied on one sentence. "The human emperor taught me the heart of Tao." There was even a woman who set up a small stall. Just by saying, "I went on a blind date with the human emperor," caused the stall to explode in sales. While everyone was talking about the enlightenment in the Bright Moon Village, Han Fei was consolidating his cultivation in the Origin Sea. Splitting the heavens only opened up the sky of the Origin Source Sea. However, it was only opening up the sky. It wasn't actually stable. What Han Fei comprehended was the path of returning, which closely combined the great Tao with the Origin Sea. After he opened up this piece of sky, he couldn't help but have many doubts. There was the sky, there was the earth, there was the rotation of yin and yang. He couldn't help but think, how did yin and yang rotate? The great Tao of yin and yang transformed into the sun and moon. When they intersected with yin and yang, there would definitely be fluctuations. After the sun and moon alternated, where did they fall? This was because he subconsciously felt that the sun rose in the east and set in the west. If this rule was to be followed, what would the final surface of the Origin Sea look like? Almost instinctively, Han Fei felt that the Origin Sea should be a sphere, and the rotation of yin and yang was also circular, which made sense. However, he had seen the origin seas of Huang Jingyuan, Bei Luochen, and Sherpa Huang. Their origin seas seemed to only expand infinitely. Even the old tortoise had never tried to form the origin sea in the form of a sphere. Besides, the old turtle said, "If the origin sea becomes a sphere, won't its size be fixed?" At that time, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. The heaven-opening state was based on the size of the Strong's origin sea. Just as the old turtle said, if he took the initiative to shape the origin sea into the shape of a planet, wouldn't its size be fixed? However, when he expanded his origin sea after the all things returned to origin, he vaguely felt something. Everything returned to the origin sea. But if the origin sea hadn't been condensed, wouldn't the origin sea itself not conform to the concept of nature? Han Fei had been thinking about this problem for the past few days, but he always felt that something was wrong. So Han Fei took out his fishing hook and fished out the historical projection of the Beast King. As soon as he came out, he heard the Beast King yell, "Didn't I tell you not to fish people?" Han Fei hurriedly said, "Master, I have something to ask you. It will have a profound impact on how to open the path to heaven." Oh, seeing that it was a serious matter, The Beast King didn't embarrass Han Fei and asked, "What's the problem?" Han Fei asked, "Master, does the origin sea expand infinitely?" "So that's what you're talking about." The Beast King said, "I've also thought about this problem of yours back then. And after countless years of exploration, I came to the conclusion that it is not." Han Fei's eyes lit up. "That's right. I knew that the origin sea couldn't expand infinitely. Otherwise, it would feel a little boring." The Beast King said, "Now that you have opened the sky, even if you refer to reality, you will know the truth of the sunrise and the moonset. Therefore, after opening the sky, people will speculate that the origin sea is spherical, just like the stars. However, everyone knows that the bigger the origin sea, the better, so this direction should be correct. Even I have worked hard to open the origin sea for a long time, almost exhausting all the resources of the Emperor before I chose to connect the origin sea in all directions and condense it into a sphere." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Condensing a sphere can prove my Tao?" The Beast King sneered. "How can it be so easy? You already know that the origin sea is connected to the sea of stars, right? Once the origin sea becomes like a big star, you need a lot of resources to maintain its operation. This is also what you need to do when you are in the sea expansion realm and the heaven opening realm. The purpose of the sea expansion realm is to open the sky. In fact, it doesn't matter how many resources are injected into the origin sea. The purpose of the heaven opening realm is to turn the origin sea into a star, but the size of the star and the path after the star is turned into is the key. Just turning into a star was already very difficult. You needed too many resources. Even so, even if you turn into a star, it doesn't mean that you can prove your Tao. What you need to prove your Tao is how to bear the Tao of heaven and earth, how to transform your Tao into the heavenly Tao, and how to integrate with the heavenly Tao. Only when you understand this can you have a chance to prove your Tao." Many thoughts flashed through Han Fei's mind, and he couldn't help but say, "So, after opening the sky, most people in the heaven opening realm know the way to prove their Tao, but it's very difficult to implement." The Beast King nodded. "You can say that. The bigger the origin sea, the stronger it is. Besides, after turning into a star, there will indeed be an upper limit to one's strength. Therefore, most people are unwilling to turn into stars. Even if some people are willing, after they turn into stars, their strength will not be much higher than when they didn't turn into stars. And it is also very difficult to integrate the heavenly Tao and one's own Tao. It is not as simple as you think. Therefore, unless it is absolutely necessary, people are usually unwilling to turn into stars before they understand the heavenly Tao and their own Tao." Han Fei couldn't help but look at the Beast King. "Master, then why did you turn into a star?" The Beast King said, "I understood the heavenly Tao and my own Tao. After I proved my Tao, I became an emperor. So why didn't I turn into a star?" Han Fei wondered. "Since you have already understood it, why don't you expand the origin sea, make yourself stronger, and then turn into a star?" The Beast King smiled and said, "You know, the heaven opening realm is the heaven opening realm after all. The bigger the origin sea is, the more difficult it is to turn into a star. The resources needed are simply astronomical. What can I get the resources? I'm guarding this place. How can I have time to look for resources?" Han Fei's heart moved. It seemed to make sense. His origin sea was only 130,000 kilometers wide, but he had already consumed countless resources. He couldn't even imagine it. Even if he wanted to turn into a star now, the same resources would at least double or even more. And in the heaven opening realm, for every 10,000 kilometers the origin sea expanded, the resources needed would almost double. It could be seen how difficult the heaven opening realm's demand for resources was. According to the Beast King, it seemed that all the resources of that emperor had been used up. It was no wonder that when he had asked for resources from him, he had given him nothing but a sovereign's handbook. But no matter what, Han Fei got a clear answer from the Beast King, that on the way to the heaven opening realm, he had to achieve one goal, and that was to turn into a star. No matter how complicated it was, he had to turn into a star first. And just as the Beast King said, most people were reluctant to turn into stars, and Han Fei was certainly not willing to do so now. Not to mention that he had no resources now. Even if he had resources, he would probably use them to expand the Origin Sea. He was only 130,000 kilometers away. How could he go to the heaven-opening realm so soon? He hadn't even seen the Sea Realm world. If he went to the heaven-opening realm now, even if he succeeded, he might become the weakest emperor in history. After solving this puzzle, Han Fei was immediately enlightened. The Beast King's figure had already become illusory. He said, "Boy, the chaotic sea is not big after all. I'll wait for you to leave this place as soon as possible. When you prove your Tao, you and I will join hands, and we can also establish a force. The two of us, master and disciple, can also explore the Sea Realm." Han Fei grinned and said, "Master, wait for me for a few days. I will go to unify the human race and wait until my son is born. I also want to ask you to help me take care of my child." The Beast King slapped him, and Han Fei still fell to the ground, thinking that he couldn't stop it at all. The Beast King snorted coldly. "Take care of your child? I proved my Tao just to take care of your child?" Han Fei. Chapter 2100. Han Fei now had some clues about the exploration of the Origin Sea of the heaven-opening realm, and he had a venerable emperor to ask. Don't underestimate this little clue. If it were others, they might have to guess and make a choice, which was a very difficult thing. The Origin Sea was now undergoing a spontaneous remodeling similar to the movement of the Earth's crust, which should take a relatively long process. But now that he had advanced in the time chain, which accelerated time by 128 times, this process would be greatly accelerated. 100 years was actually equivalent to 10,000 years of accumulation. Therefore, from the beginning of the heaven-opening realm, he was destined to be much faster than Bei Luochen and the others. After learning about the star conversion, the first thing Han Fei had to do was naturally to choose a bloodline to devour. If nothing went wrong, it would take him a long time to devour any bloodline. The main problem was which one to devour. As a mysterious god, the hexagon starfish's inheritance was mainly focused on defense. If he chose this bloodline, he might have room for improvement in the field of arrays. Moreover, with his physique, coupled with the hexagon starfish's talent in arrays, when the arrays were opened, his chances of survival were very high, even in the Sea Realm. Time dragon carps, as creatures that swam in the long river of time, naturally had unparalleled talents. What was certain was that if he devoured this bloodline, he should go further on the Great Way of Time. The Great Way of Time was the most difficult to comprehend. Even he couldn't swim in time and could only resist the erosion of time for a short time. Of course, now that he had opened the heaven-opening realm, he might be able to travel hundreds or even thousands of years in time. But further away, Han Fei wasn't sure. Since opening the heaven-opening realm, Han Fei's understanding of his lifespan was about 1,000,000 years. Because at this realm, if he didn't appear in the world, he could really live for such a long time. And some other creatures might have a longer lifespan. This was the difference between races. And the last bloodline was the Golden Crow divine blood. This bloodline was undoubtedly a very powerful bloodline. In fact, it might even be the strongest bloodline among the three, because this was the essence blood of the Golden Crow, a divine beast. If he swallowed this bloodline, it might greatly improve his combat talent, and so on. It could even elevate the level of his bloodline to a very high level. However, he was ranked at the same level as the hexagon starfish and the time dragon carp, which might also mean that even if it was the blood essence of a divine beast, this divine beast might not be that strong. After all, the Dart Sparrow had fought with the divine beasts in the past. In terms of rank, the divine beasts and the great desolate beasts should be of the same rank. Therefore, there was no need to be particularly surprised that a divine beast was not a divine beast. At the very least, he could confirm that the twin yin-yang spirits swallowing fishes and the Emperor Sparrow's bloodlines were clearly superior to the Golden Crow divine blood. Han Fei thought about it again and finally decided on the Time Dragon Carp bloodline. The reason why he chose the Time Dragon Carp was mainly because of its control over time. I don't know what happened to old Han and my mother. I don't even know where they're trapped. He had tried to fish old Han not long ago, but old Han was like a wooden statue and didn't say anything. If he wanted to know what had happened, he would have to go back again and think of a way to ask his father about them. Now that he had made his choice, Han Fei didn't hesitate. Devour. After a while, 6,022 years of devouring time appeared in Han Fei's information. Han Fei was speechless. If he didn't accelerate time in the Origin Sea, it would take him more than 6,000 years to devour this bloodline. It could be seen that the higher the level, the more difficult it was to devour bloodlines. Anyway, it would take more than 47 years of normal time to complete the devouring, so Han Fei wasn't in a hurry. Having decided to devour the blood essence of the time dragon carp, the golden crow divine blood could only be given to the giant beast avatar. As for how the giant beast avatar would use it, it would depend on what kind of opportunities would appear in the future. As for the essence blood of the hexagon starfish, Han Fei could only give it up, probably after he devoured the bloodline of the time dragon carp. The bloodline of the hexagon starfish wouldn't be prompted. In addition to the bloodline devouring, Han Fei had another thing to do, that was the fourth divine elixir. No matter how the Origin Sea changed, the demon purification pot was not affected, and the fourth divine elixir had long been on the verge of maturity. At the moment when the primordial purple chi was injected into the Origin Sea, this elixir finally matured. The fourth elixir could ride the fog and clouds, control the stars and the sea, and absorb the spiritual aura of the earth. Suppress a sea, open up a sky. I am the master of this world. This elixir seemed to be very suitable for the cultivation of the heaven opening state. Perhaps only the heaven opening state could devour this elixir. Of course, Han Fei didn't immediately pick this elixir, because he was now seriously short of resources. He didn't have any chaotic chi, nor did he have much immortal spiritual chi. He didn't have any fierce chi either. All of them had been returned to the Origin Sea. If he needed a lot of resources to devour this elixir, it would be troublesome. So, Han Fei quietly left for a few months. Under the guidance of a nautical panorama, he dug more than 20 small ultra-quality spiritual stone veins and harvested more than 800,000 ultra-quality spiritual stones. Then on this day above the sea, Han Fei smashed the void with a single slash and created an endless void. The cultivation of the heaven opening state mostly absorbed the chaotic chi from the endless void and refined it into immortal spiritual chi. The only difficulty was that the closing ability of the endless void was too strong. If it was accidentally closed, the possibility of opening it again from the inside was very small. However, for Han Fei, this was not a big problem. After using the Gemini divine technique, his strength was also amazing. The black fog body entered the endless void and directly absorbed the chaotic chi with the demon purification pot. Yes, others might also need to absorb the chaotic chi themselves to open the endless void. At that speed, even for the heaven opening state, every time they cut open the endless void, it would be good if they could harvest a few or dozens of strands of chaotic chi. As time went on, there would naturally be more and more. But Han Fei was different. The demon purification pot only had one way to absorb the chaotic chi and immortal spiritual chi. And Han Fei kept attacking outside, opening the endless void, not letting it close. On average, he had to attack once every 2 seconds. And cutting open the endless void also consumed a lot of energy. Even for the Emperor, they needed to rest for a day before they could do it 10 times at a time. Han Fei was not an ordinary emperor. He was a body cultivator. He could cut open the endless void with brute force and could persist for more than 30 times before he was temporarily exhausted. Besides, this kind of exhaustion could be recovered after half a day of rest. In other words, every time Han Fei opened the endless void, he could last for more than 50 seconds. Such a long time was enough for the demon purification pot to absorb half of the Emperor's Origin Sea. Of course, although there was a huge amount of chaotic chi in the endless void, the amount was not as concentrated as the Emperor's Origin Sea. So Han Fei's harvest was about 2,500 to 3,000 strands at a time. If others were to find out about this number, they would probably be dumbfounded. No one could imagine that Han Fei could absorb 8,000 strands of chaotic energy in a day, which was so precious. How could ordinary people dare to think about this for a year? And Han Fei's plan was to absorb it for a year, because he was going to upgrade the time chain again and continue to accelerate the origin sea. It seemed that after opening the sky, he had too much room for improvement, so Han Fei's plan went very smoothly. More than 4 months later, the time chain was upgraded again. At this time, the time acceleration in his origin sea had reached a terrifying level of 256 times. However, to Han Fei's surprise, the time chain disappeared. This made Han Fei's heart sink. Was it because there were not enough little vines, so the time chain couldn't continue to upgrade, so it disappeared? Han Fei thought it was very likely to be the reason. Therefore, he didn't care very much. After all, his origin sea now had 256 times the time acceleration, which was already a very terrifying number. Not thinking about this, a few days later, Han Fei used the chaotic qi to transform the immortal spiritual energy for the first time. But this transformation suddenly made him feel that something was wrong. When he was in the Pioneer Sea realm, 10 strands of chaotic qi could be transformed into 1 strand of immortal spiritual energy. But now, it took 100 strands of chaotic qi to transform 1 strand of immortal spiritual energy. When Han Fei shot out the current immortal spiritual qi, he was surprised to find that the power of this immortal spiritual qi seemed to be stronger. There was actually a Taoist aura in it, and it was not just 1 or 2 kinds of Taoist aura. It seemed to contain a trace of the power of the Great Way. Han Fei used a day to test it, and the fierce qi condensed by the mysterious yellow qi turned out to be the same as the immortal spiritual energy. As usual, he shot out the immortal spiritual energy. As a result, this sword strike collapsed the void of 6,000 kilometers, and the endless void was directly blasted out for about 5 seconds. F***CK. So strong? Han Fei was shocked. Could it be that the way he opened the sky was wrong? The way of returning to the origin was 10 times more difficult to condense the immortal spiritual energy than the ordinary heaven opening state? Chapter 2101. Old Yuan. After you open the sky, what's the ratio of the chaotic energy to the immortal spiritual energy? The old turtle was silent most of the time. Han Fei was too powerful now. The only meaning of his existence now was to know more and answer Han Fei's questions at any time. The old turtle knew that only by finding his original body could he be useful to Han Fei now. Therefore, when Han Fei asked the question, the old turtle immediately replied, 100 to 1. Although you could transform the chaotic energy into immortal spiritual energy before, that immortal spiritual energy didn't have the blessing of Taoist aura. Besides, you used to be in the sea expansion realm, but now you are in the sky opening realm. The level of your power is different, so the level of the immortal spiritual energy you transform is naturally different. Han Fei frowned. I don't feel much. The old turtle said, before, you could only use the power of the heaven opening realm when you burst out 1 strand of divine killing intent. But only when you burst out 100 strands of divine killing intent at the same time can it be regarded as a real terrifying blow of the heaven opening realm. When you pretended to fight with Kong Shun, that blow was really powerful, but you didn't hit the target, so it might not be obvious. Now, when you slashed down with your sword, the void collapsed. Isn't it obvious? Han Fei thought to himself, so that's how it is. I thought it was 10 times more difficult for me to transform the chaotic energy with my way of returning. The old turtle said, but, in my opinion, it's not that your transformation is more difficult than others. It's just that it's easier than others, because the immortal spiritual energy you transform seems to be more complicated, and the level of your power seems to be much higher than others. Han Fei sighed slightly. It's a pity that I thought I could be 10 times more powerful than my enemies. After a slight sigh, Han Fei didn't take it seriously. After all, his growth was already fast enough. If his power of heaven opening was 10 times more powerful than his enemies, wouldn't he be invincible in a heaven opening realm in minutes? 8 months later, Han Fei saved 500,000 strands of chaotic energy, 10,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy, and 3,000 strands of ferocious spiritual energy. Anyway, if it was a battle, Han Fei would be able to burst out 300 strands of divine killing intent. Because the infinite void was here, he could obtain resources at any time. Han Fei finally knew why there was so little chaotic energy and immortal spiritual energy in the origin sea of Bei Luochun and the others. They might not even have 50,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy in their bodies, and their chaos energy might only be maintained at around 200,000 strands. Of course, the speed at which he absorbed the chaotic aura was 100 times faster than them. But there were people who had lived for tens of thousands of years. How could they only have so little stock? It was obvious that their immortal chi was most likely going to be used to open up their origin sea. The 50,000 strands of immortal chi were only left for emergencies. Looking at it this way, if he cultivated for 3 to 5 years, the amount of power he could accumulate would be several times that of their normal reserves. After that, he could cultivate the chaos energy and immortal chi, which he could use to open up his origin sea. Of course, Han Fei didn't intend to spend so long. What he wanted to do this time was efficiency. As Xia Xiaochan said, He Daoyuan was a hidden danger after all. If a powerful heaven-opening expert made a targeted attack, it would still be a very frightening thing. Han Fei came to the vine of the demon purification pot, reached out, and touched it. The pill fell into Han Fei's palm. The fourth divine pellet was suitable for heaven creation realm cultivation. When Han Fei took the divine pellet without hesitation, his whole soul buzzed as if it was about to leave his body. He felt that his mind was wandering in the sky and even about to break through the sea of stars. Han Fei felt the clouds in the sky, the wind and thunder rumbling, the earth veins being squeezed, the spiritual spring forming veins, and the river flowing. With a thought, Han Fei appeared in the outside world. Because the origin sea was his, he didn't know whether it was because of the fourth divine pellet or because of his control of the origin sea. When he appeared in the outside world, he felt the same situation, or even worse. Han Fei felt that his soul had left his body and could feel the changes in this world. The tides were surging on the sea. There were schools of fish swimming under the sea. The sky was hazy with clouds and mist, and thunder was faintly heard. The direction in which the spiritual energy between heaven and earth flowed, and the direction in which the undersea currents flowed, seemed that everything was under his control. Han Fei could feel the vitality of nature, the power of nature, the mighty power between heaven and earth, and the flow of spiritual energy in the earth veins. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Why was this similar to the fusion of the great path of heaven and his own path that the Beast King mentioned? Then Han Fei remembered what the Emperor said in the letter. There was a way to lead the great path of heaven into one's own path, or to cut one's own path into the great path of heaven and man. He was in this state now, although he was on the great path of returning. However, at this moment, Han Fei found that he could not only take the great path of returning, but also the great path of heaven and man. He only needed to cut off part of his own path and integrate it into the great path of heaven and man. Then he could use the great path of heaven and man to cover his true great path. At this moment, Han Fei was thrilled. He didn't know what the fourth divine pellet was capable of. Today, he realized that it was so terrifying that he could become a part of the great path of heaven. In the origin sea, massive resources were being consumed. Han Fei had to make a decision immediately. He needed to cut off, or rather, separate part of the power of the great path and turn it into the great path of heaven. A lot of thoughts flashed through Han Fei's mind. He immediately cut off the great path of time and the great path of Tianqi. These two great paths turned into the great path of heaven and man. They no longer belonged to the Jade Bridge, but to the origin sea. In this way, the large amount of chaotic energy and immortal spiritual chi that Han Fei had just accumulated wrapped the two great paths and part of his soul and assimilated them into this world. This situation lasted for more than 2 hours. When Han Fei slowly opened his eyes, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He didn't expect that after studying the Great Path of returning for 200 years, he was still on the path of merging the Great Path into the Origin Sea. Of course, his Great Path didn't merge with the earth of the Origin Sea. Everything here, including the wind, thunder, rain and lightning, the sun and the moon, was actually a part of the Great Path. In this way, Han Fei's three supreme Great Paths were all integrated into the Origin Sea. The Great Path of Yin and Yang turned into the sun and the moon, the Yin and Yang of the world. The Great Path of Tianqi turned into the vitality of the Origin Sea. At this moment, in the Origin Sea, countless sprouts appeared on the earth, which was brought by the vitality of the Great Path of Tianqi. The Great Path of Time was integrated into the Origin Sea, giving the Origin Sea time in a real sense. Han Fei was sure that in the future, he would no longer need the Green Jade Bridge to switch Great Paths. He could use them with a single thought. These three supreme Great Paths completely hid the Great Path of Origin in the Green Jade Bridge. Even if something happened one day, as long as his Great Path of Origin was not destroyed, he would not die. This meant that no one in the heaven-opening state could kill him at all. Even a venerable emperor might not be able to discover his true Great Path. Whoosh! Han Fei suddenly got up. It was time to stabilize his cultivation this time. Although if he practiced the void sky observing technique and the void fire refining technique, his strength should be greatly improved, and he would make rapid progress in the early stage of the heaven-opening state. However, the path of cultivation in the heaven-opening state was long. No matter how fast his cultivation speed was, he couldn't become fat in one go. After more than a year of cultivation, his strength had basically stabilized, and it was time for him to get down to business. Looking at his information again, except for the separation of the Great Paths, everything else was within his expectations. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 100, heaven opening. C10,000 family tree greater than 360,201, evolving. 06022, immortal spiritual energy 4, 200 origin C greater than 130,000 kilometers, spiritual power 1681598, perception range 2 million kilometers, power 118,9968 waves, first spiritual heritage, primordial vein, second spiritual heritage, vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 92, second spiritual beast, emperor sparrow, level 98, main art, time fishing, level 8 of void fishing, emperor level, divine quality. A lot of immortal spiritual energy was consumed when he swallowed the fourth divine pill, but the ferocious energy didn't change much. But because it wasn't his main art, it didn't show up. He should still have half of the chaotic chi left, which could be converted into more than 2,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy. Therefore, Han Fei wasn't in a hurry to open the infinite void and swallow the chaotic chi. The weakening of the power of the soul was because part of it had been integrated into the heavenly path and could only be recovered slowly. And the strengthening of the power should be caused by the integration of the heavenly path into the Origin Sea. After all, he hadn't cultivated before, so he could only understand it in this way. At this point, Han Fei's strength was stabilized. He couldn't wait to go back. He didn't know how old his son or daughter were now. Half an hour later, Han Fei couldn't wait to go to the 9 Palace Heaven. Since Xia Xiaochan was pregnant, to be safe, she stayed in the 9 Palace Heaven, guarded by Han Xian. As soon as Han Fei came back, Han Xian noticed it. He scanned him with his perception and couldn't help but be shocked. It's only been a year and 2 months. You've consolidated it? Han Fei shrugged. What else can I do? Han Xian was speechless. It seemed that his nephew was indeed more talented than him. It took him more than 50 years to completely consolidate his cultivation. After replying to Han Xian, Han Fei's face suddenly changed, and he roared, "Hey, what qualifications do you have? You're pregnant. Why did you run to the trial field?" Chapter 2102. Xia Xiaochan was pulled back from the trial field by Han Fei in a daze. Han Fei said angrily, "Can't you take a break for a few years? The trial is such a dangerous thing. Is it something you can do?" What if I hit you in the stomach? Xia Xiaochan was speechless. Heh, I'm a grand sea expansion monarch. Can a mere trial injure me? Besides, have you ever seen a king who could kill his child with just a few jumps? Han Fei said, Anyway, don't jump around. Aren't you going to cultivate reincarnation? With your current foundation, it will be very easy for you to cultivate reincarnation. When your incarnation becomes a king, it will be the time for your foundation to be repaired. At that time, you will be the real son of God. Xia Xiaochan said, I'm thinking about a question. Han Fei. Xia Xiaochan said, If I cultivate reincarnation, will it still be me? What if my reincarnation doesn't want to return? After all, it took her a long time to become a king. Once she becomes a king, she will merge with me, and then she will be gone. Do you think she will agree? Han Fei was shocked by this statement. It seemed to make sense. The relationship between Tang Ge and Tang Yin was very complicated. Tang Yin had already become a sea expansion realm lord. Then, when Tang Ge also became a sea conqueror, should he return? After Tang Ge returned, who would he be? Seeing that Han Fei was also thinking, Xia Xiaochan said, As the main body, I can forcibly summon him back. However, it was clearly another person's memories, another person's personality, another person's emotions. I don't think this is the right way. Cultivating reincarnation can only help you survive. If you want to cultivate, you should recultivate. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Recultivate? You have already become a king. Xia Xiaochan said, I have already become a king, so I know the power of a king. If I were to recultivate, my path would be smooth and unobstructed. At this time, the old turtle also said, Although it takes time to recultivate, I don't think time is valuable. I can just take a nap. If I can recultivate, it will be better than cultivating reincarnation. Han Fei couldn't help but frown. What Xia Xiaochan said was not unreasonable. He said, That's good. When this is over and your son is born, I'll cultivate with you again. It just so happens that I also need time to continue strengthening my heaven-opening stage cultivation and prepare to go out. One day later, above the sky, Han Fei gave the order. All kings, listen to my orders. Gather at the 9 palace heaven with all the venerable ones within 3 days. The second expedition of the human race, the crusade against the grand pure infinity, is about to begin. Buzz, on this day the world was shaken. Someone said excitedly, The second expedition has begun. Does this mean that we'll have to move to the inner region in the future? I heard that the density of spirit chi in the inner region is several times that of the outer region, and the resources are 10 times that of the outer region. That's a great place. Someone said, It's hard to say now. The expedition hasn't even started, and you already want to live in the inner region? That person sneered. Do you think you can run when a human sovereign is here? Were Bei Luochen of the limitless sky and Sherpa Huang of the 100 demon race killed by human kings? It's an open secret now. Everyone sighed. Anyway, this is a good thing. Human sovereign Emperor Xian, the emperor of one sword, the emperor of snails, and the sword god. Human sovereign has made friends all over the world. With such great strength, how can he lose? We just need to wait for human sovereign to return. Someone echoed, Yes, it's said that human sovereign is extremely efficient. Marching for a month, fighting for a while. I think the inner region is not far from us. While the people were discussing, the kings and the venerables quickly returned. When Han Fei opened the sky, the kings and the venerables were already ready. They thought it would take at least a decade or two for human sovereign to consolidate his strength. Who would have thought that he would come out of seclusion in just over a year? A venerable exclaimed, No wonder he is the human sovereign. He can split the sky when he is only at the sea expansion stage. Now that he has just opened the sky, I don't know whether his strength has been consolidated or not, but he's going to take down the grand pure infinity. He's really efficient. Someone echoed, In the last battle, in addition to 10 million ultra-quality spiritual stones, I also killed a venerable of the 100 demon race and gained a lot. No one blamed me. Someone sneered. Who's going to pursue the trifling matter that you've obtained? The 100 demon race was destroyed, and the resources and wealth were 900 billion on the surface. but in fact it was much more than that. So many venerables who didn't get some benefits. When I cleaned up the battlefield, I saw 5 or 6 sun moon shells. A venerable who had just become a venerable joined in. Seniors, do you think I, who has just become a venerable, can get share of the spoils? The two looked at each other and smiled. Yes, we can. In fact, we don't need to do anything. It's the human sovereign and the kings who really need to take action. Once there is a winner in the battle between the strong, the battle will be won. Our main task is to gather the immortal palace and preside over the situation after the victory. There will definitely be benefits. Han Fei didn't expect that only one day after he said he would gather in 3 days, the kings would arrive. Except for a few special cases, such as in seclusion, all the venerables who could come were here. Last time, he just met the kings in a hurry and then went into seclusion. He didn't have time to meet them one by one. Now, Han Fei couldn't help but find that Jiu Ling was also here. It seemed that Jiu Ling was much more open-minded now. She said that she would see Han Fei again in the future, not now, but in the distant future. Therefore, Jiu Ling was very calm now, even when she saw Xia Xiaochan standing next to Han Fei. Part of the reason why Xia Xiaochan had to go to this battle was that Jiu Ling would also go. Of course, Jiu Ling was only a small factor for Xia Xiaochan to go. If she went, the mermaid royal family would definitely send experts to watch the battle, and Xia Hongzhu might even watch the battle in person. With the mermaid royal family watching the battle, this battle would definitely be won. And the probability of the mermaid royal family participating was almost 0. Because from the moment Xia Hongzhu woke up, the enemy was no longer the human race in the chaotic ocean. The entire mermaid royal family had only one goal, the infamily in the sea realm. Besides, Xia Xiaochan felt that she would definitely win this battle. Because Han Fei had the nautical multitude instrument, he Dao Yuan could not know. Since he knew, he wouldn't run. If he couldn't run, there was no reason for him to win because the Grand Pure Infinity had too few heaven-opening realm experts. Once Han Fei joined forces with the Sword God Palace, the Chaos Heavens would also stand on Han Fei's side. Grand Pure Infinity had already secretly taken action. And after this battle, Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan had to return to the mermaid royal family. After all, Xia Hongzhu should know something as important as Xia Xiaochan's pregnancy. Because Han Fei had the backing of the Beast King, he was very confident. No matter how powerful Xia Hongzhu was, she couldn't be more powerful than a venerable sovereign. Han Fei found that whether it was the Snow Girls, Liang Yin, or Huang Jie, their strength seemed to have improved a lot. These people had all come out of the imperial palace alive and had more or less obtained some opportunities. For example, the immortal palace lords like Xie Yu and Li Yingtian who returned later, because they were all at the immortal palace lord level, their strength wouldn't be too bad. At this moment, everyone looked at him without the hesitation and suspicion they had when they first met. Hong Yu shouted, "We asked the human emperor to go on an expedition ahead of time and recover the inner region. It's our lifelong wish. Now, the army is full of momentum. It's time to march." As soon as Hong Yu shouted, all the venerables of the Berserk Corpse cult shouted, "The human emperor, go on an expedition, recover the inner region, and kill the traitors." With the Berserk Corpse cult taking the lead, the kings all cupped their fists. "The human emperor, go on an expedition." All the venerables shouted at the same time, "The human emperor, go on an expedition." Han Fei looked at Han Xian. "Uncle Xian, I'm afraid I have to leave you to guard the outer region this time." Han Xian asked, "Why don't you take me, a strong fighter, with you?" Han Fei said, "The Snail Emperor is slow, but he can't be faster than you. This time is different from last time. Last time, Sherpa Huang only sent 2 kings. But this time, if he Dao Yuan doesn't respect martial ethics and attacks us as an emperor, the consequences are not something we can bear. Therefore, there must be someone guarding the rear." Han Xian nodded slightly. "Okay, with the Qinji Divine Ghost Disc, if he Dao Yuan really comes, I'll kill him alone." The uncle and nephew looked at each other and smiled. Han Xian was telling the truth. Han Fei knew that Han Xian was telling the truth. Han Fei didn't think he Dao Yuan could defeat the fifth form of the Qianji divine ghost disc with the strength of an emperor. Even he could only unleash 6 times the strength of the Qianji divine ghost disc. The fifth form of the Qianji divine ghost disc could unleash 10 times the combat power. Once it was unleashed, the result could be imagined. Han Fei leaped up and stood on the 9-palace sky tower. They heard him shout, "Good. Recover the inner region and unify the human race. It's the wish of all people. The human race should be unified and share the endless resources of the inner region. Kill the traitors, revive the human race, create a prosperous era, and create chaos in the sea. The human race should stand tall. Roar, this trip is to kill the traitors, revive the human race, and create a prosperous era. This trip is to kill the traitors, revive the human race, and create a prosperous era." Chapter 2103. News of the human clan's new expedition reached the inner region in a few days. The foreign fleet had just passed through the bewildering fog sea. Several large ships were already waiting here. Taking a closer look, he realized that they were all familiar faces. Zhao Xianglong and Lu Li came to pick him up in person. Zhao Xianglong couldn't help but sigh. It was said that Han Fei had already split open the sky. This child's cultivation talent was truly monstrous. Zhao Xianglong and Liu Li. Greetings, Human King. Greetings, Senior Emperor Snail. Even though they had never seen the Snail Emperor before, it wasn't hard for them to tell. When Han Fei saw Zhao Xianglong, he couldn't help but say, "Brother Zhao seems to be doing well recently." Zhao Xianglong smiled slightly. "Fortunately, I obtain a mind-cleansing mantra from Greater Darkness Heaven. Cultivating it every day, I should be able to fully recover after 1,000 years. However, I'm afraid splitting open the sky is impossible." Han Fei nodded slightly. Zhao Xianglong's obsession was so great that the entire dragon-subduing heaven had almost collapsed because of him. If he couldn't pass this trial, he wouldn't be able to split open the sky. Han Fei then looked at Lu Li and sighed. "I was also helpless when Qiu Yueming died in the Arch Palace." Lu Li cupped her hands. "Human Emperor, you don't have to blame yourself. The Arch Palace has a slim chance of survival, so how can the King Realm be an exception? Moreover, I heard that Ren Huang saved her several times. If she wants to blame something, she can only blame her bad luck." "Yes. To make a long story short, what's the current situation in the inner region?" "Zhao Xianglong, let's go. We'll talk as we walk." After a while, the army continued to advance. According to Zhao Xianglong and Lu Li, the situation in the inner domain was far more delicate than he had imagined. It was said that Dao Yuan knew that a great disaster was about to befall him. So he took the risk out of desperation and entered the demonic path. Moreover, in order to forcefully seize part of the immortal palace in his hands, the Grand Pure One forcefully subdued the Golden Crow, Dream Weaving, and Medicine King immortal palaces. After all, the unification and victory in the outer regions had allowed the major palaces in the inner regions to understand the situation. Bei Luochun was dead, and a real Wang Yijian had suddenly appeared in the Sword God Palace. He had even killed an emperor with a single sword strike. Apart from the Grand Pure One and the Chaos, who could match them? The Chaos heavens had long sealed the skies. The Grand Pure Limitless and the 100 Demon race joined hands. But in the end, the 100 Demon race was annihilated. Now, there was no way to reverse the situation. If it wasn't for He Dao Yuan's quick reflexes, forcefully taking in the Golden Crow Immortal Palace, Dream Immortal Palace, and Medicine King Immortal Palace, it was certain that they would betray them. Even a beauty of Golden Crow, Heaven wouldn't want to be Han Fei's enemy under such circumstances. Instead, he would think about how to join Han Fei's side like Han Yu. Unfortunately, the conditions did not allow it. Apart from Heavenly Xianglong, not long after Zhao Xianglong returned, he had already secretly contacted the Sword God 4 palaces, allowing him to escape the Grand Pure Wuji's control. For example, before the Grand Pure One and the others were defeated, they would never have thought that they would lose. Lu Li said, "Now, the Tai Yuan heaven sealing technique has been used. Although the Sword God and Wang Yijian are strong, it's not so easy to kill a sovereign realm cultivator with one sword. The reason why Wang Yijian was able to kill a king with a single strike was because his sword had not been unsheathed for too long. Furthermore, Yun Tianhe was a hidden heaven opening expert. If Yun Tianhe and Xian Qingzi joined hands, they could barely fight against Wang Yijian. Even if these two were no match for Wang Yijian, perhaps Senior Sword God was already no match for He Daoyuan. So, we don't dare to act rashly. Oh, hearing this, Han Fei was shocked. Senior Sword God was defeated by He Daoyuan? Did He Daoyuan become so powerful after becoming a demon? Zhao Xianglong said in a low voice, although I do not know the specifics of the situation. However, He Daoyuan's situation is most likely similar to my situation at the beginning of the Dragon Subduing Sky. They had activated something extremely dangerous. Although the Dragon Clan didn't descend like the Subduing Dragon Heaven, the Dragon Clan didn't descend. However, He Daoyuan himself must have used a similar method to communicate with some sort of existence and entered the demonic path. Although his strength had not doubled, it had at least increased by 70 to 80%. If not for his fear of Wang Yijian, He Daoyuan might have dared to make a move. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Did the Beast King know about this? However, if they were to communicate with the outside world through sacrificial rituals, the Beast King might not be aware of it. It was just like how the Godbane Heaven had always been in contact with the clan and practiced God's descent. If He Daoyuan's strength was doubled, he could not be underestimated. He was not an ordinary heaven opening tier cultivator, but the former leader of the 36 mysterious heavens. His strength was even stronger than Bei Luochen. Han Fei asked, now the dream-weaving heaven and the medicine king heaven can't contact each other at all? Lu Li said, just like the outer realm, the grand pure Wuji and the 3 great divine palaces have gathered together. There are hundreds of millions of humans there. If we fight now, I'm afraid the innocent will be implicated. Zhao Xianglong said, if we force a fight, it is inevitable that He Daoyuan will do something outrageous. We can't ignore the lives of hundreds of millions of humans just to kill him. Han Fei nodded slightly. This was a bit tricky. If it was a fair fight, so what if He Daoyuan's strength doubled? You can double your strength, but I can't? If my strength doubled, can I break the shell of the Snail King? However, if He Daoyuan was using the lives of hundreds of millions of people to threaten me, should I fight or not? Han Fei was silent for a while and then said, no matter what, let's see He Daoyuan's people first. 3 days later, Taishan Heaven, the Sword God, Wang Yijian, Han Fei, the Snail King, and Kong Shun all gathered here. The Sword God said, since you are walking on the great way of the human emperor, you must not give up the hundreds of millions of humans in the Grand Pure Wuji and the other 4 great divine palaces. Otherwise, even if your path is not cut off, I'm afraid you can't go on. Han Fei nodded. I know what He Daoyuan wants. He just wants a chance to fight me one-on-one to the death. Why do you think so? Even Wang Yijian couldn't help but ask this question. Han Fei smiled slightly. Even if he wants to use these hundreds of millions of humans to block my path, he will do it when he is face to face with me. Otherwise, if he slaughters them in advance, it will be beyond my reach. In fact, he can't block my great way of the human emperor. He Daoyuan understands this truth, so he will definitely meet with me. Maybe he is still hoping to kill me and get the nautical multitude instrument. The Sword God asked, why doesn't he slaughter the great divine palaces and hundreds of millions of humans first to cut off your path to the human emperor, and then fight with you? Han Fei said, unless he doesn't want to live? If he doesn't want to live, why did he become a demon? Once hundreds of millions of humans die, how can he survive as long as we are here? Han Fei smiled. If he wants to fight me, then I'll satisfy him. The Snail King asked, fight you to the death? I'll take you to the territory he has set up. There were only 3 heaven-opening state cultivators left in the Grand Pure Wuji sect. If He Daoyuan wanted to fight Han Fei one-on-one, he would definitely find a place where other heaven-opening state cultivators couldn't intervene. Han Fei could only think that Dao Yuan had already prepared a place for the battle, or he would follow Han Fei into the crevice of time. Of course, his purpose was to fight him one-on-one anyway. Han Fei couldn't help but sneer. When I was in the Pioneer Sea state, I wasn't afraid. After entering the heaven-opening state, my great way has been separated. No matter how strong Dao Yuan is, he can't kill me, unless this old man has already proved his Dao. However, if he had really proved his Dao, it would be so big that everyone in the chaotic vast sea would know. Even if no one here knew, the Beast King would definitely know. Therefore, Han Fei could fight this battle. Han Fei said, "Seniors, I don't know Xian Qingzi. I don't know Yin Tianhe, but he can't be stronger than Bei Luochen. If I take Dao Yuan away, the rest will be up to you." Wang Yijian said, "Xian Qingzi, it's just a sword attack." The emperors were speechless. Only a great sword cultivator like him could say that. No one doubted it at all. The old snail said, "If Dao Yuan is taken away, I can control the void and stop the 2 heaven-opening state cultivators. It won't be a problem." Although the old snail was slow, if he really fought with him, Han Fei wouldn't have a chance of winning. He had said that if it weren't for the chaotic vast sea, he would be at least as strong as the martial king and Xia Hongzhu if he went all out. Han Fei had always been decisive. He said, "Okay, I don't want any of the grand pure Wuji sects see expansion realm cultivators. If we win this battle, the venerable state cultivators will be screened one by one. The human race will be unified now." Han Fei had made up his mind, and the others didn't object. They recognized Han Fei's strength. Besides, Han Fei had mastered the great Tao of time and the heavenly awakening divine technique, which was no weaker than the human king. The human king could compete with Xia Hongzhu when she was at her peak. Even if Han Fei couldn't defeat Dao Yuan, who had just opened the sky, he wouldn't be killed. The heavenly awakening great Tao was known as the Tao of immortality. Half a day later, Han Fei ordered, "Everyone, attack the Grand Purity Palace." Latest chapter of the Fishing God. Full text of the Fishing God. /read/106468 /download address of the Fishing God. Mobile phone of the Fishing God. /read/106468 for the convenience of reading next time. You can click collect below to record this. Chapter 2103. You can read it next time you open the bookshelf. If you like Fishing God, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2104. The Medicine King's Sky. Old Qiu stared at the medicine in the furnace with a solemn face. Not just the old lady, Sha Jiming and Hua Buli didn't expect Han Fei to grow so fast. Splitting open the sky was such a difficult thing, but Han Fei did it just like that. Was he the god's favorite? Now, they were forced by Dao Yuan to do it. However, no matter what the result of the battle between Dao Yuan and Han Fei was, they would all become sacrifices. At this moment, the old lady heaved a long sigh. It was better for one person to die than for the entire Medicine King's sky. When the last medicine was ready, the old lady spat out her blood essence into the furnace. This mouthful of lifeblood essence was equivalent to 10,000 years of the old woman's lifespan. Her hair turned white at a visible speed, and wrinkles appeared on her face. The old lady was one of the first to become a king. After such a long time, she spat out another 10,000 years of her life. Her life was almost at its limit. She didn't have many years left. At this moment, the pill tribulations gathered. A moment later, 8 pill tribulations came in a row, and a blood-red pill appeared in the sky. At this moment, Dao Yuan in a black robe appeared in the sky above the Medicine King's sky. Dao Yuan praised, as expected of Elder Qiu. 8th grade divine pills are hard to come by in a lifetime. With this pill, I'll have more confidence in this battle. Old Madame Qiu's breath was weak. She panted and said, if Han Fei didn't take away the exalted purple smoke furnace, this pill might have reached level 9. Cough, cough. I can't fight. This is all I can do. I hope you can win. Dao Yuan grabbed the pill. Old Qiu, don't worry. We don't know who will be the winner until the end. After saying this, he Dao Yuan left. He didn't care about the old lady's life or death, because the last value of the Medicine King's sky was gone. Outside the Grand Purity Palace, Han Fei's army had arrived. Han Fei's voice shook the palace. He Dao Yuan, come out and die. His voice exploded in the Grand Purity Palace and the other palaces like thunder. Countless people here were all horrified. Someone said, Han Fei is really an ambitious man. How dare he call himself the human emperor? Bah, bullshit human emperor. Is this how the human emperor does things? Someone sighed. Once the battle for splitting the heavens is effected, how can we survive? Someone let out a long sigh as if he had given up hope. In the eyes of the strong, we are just ants. Currently, our celestial palaces have been sealed for 100 years. People are only allowed to enter, but not leave. My emperor is not giving us a way out. Not a single one of them is good. There isn't a single good person among the strong. Someone cursed, including he Dao Yuan and Han Fei. It wasn't the first time such voices had appeared. They had been heard since he Dao Yuan forcibly sealed the 5 great celestial palaces. Some said that he Dao Yuan was clearly trying to drag him down with him. Some people began to hesitate. Perhaps Han Fei's side was the correct path. He Dao Yuan was going to threaten Han Fei with the billions of humans from the immortal palaces. When public opinion increased, the people would naturally come to a conclusion. Now, Han Fei really came. In their opinion, Han Fei didn't take them seriously and didn't care about their safety at all. How could he be called the human emperor? In the Grand Purity Palace, he Dao Yuan was sitting on the Celestial Palace. Xian Qingzi and Yun Tianhe stood on both sides, and he Dao Yuan said indifferently, if something happens to me, you can't escape death either. So if this happens, don't hold back. Burn all the 5 great celestial palaces. Even if you die, you must cut off Han Fei's path to the human emperor. Xian Qingzi smiled slightly. At this point, we can only fight to the death. Yun Tianhe added, after you and I die, even if the flood surges to the sky, let's do it. At this moment, Han Fei stood alone 1,000,000 kilometers away from the Grand Purity Palace. Behind him, Xia Xiaochan and the others were already powerless. In the face of such a battle, even the battle of kings was meaningless. Xia Xiaochan said, Senior Sword God, Senior Emperor Snail, why did you let him take the risk alone? The Sword God responded, if not, he Dao Yuan wouldn't have fought. Luo Xiaobai took Xia Xiaochan's hand. You know him. You know how terrifying the phenomena he created were. This battle is the final decisive battle in the chaotic ocean. If Han Fei doesn't go, he Dao Yuan and the others will still have to go if they threaten him with billions of humans, but then he will be in a passive position. At this time, you can only trust him. Zhang Xuanyu held the spear in his hand. He can bring us the most surprises. It took him 200 years to create the sky. He is also the only one in the entire chaotic ocean. It will be easy for him to kill he Dao Yuan. Although Zhang Xuanyu said so, his palms were sweating. After all, he Dao Yuan was the former leader of a human race. Such a strong master had created the sky for tens of thousands of years, and Han Fei had just created the sky. Lu Renquang said in a low voice, don't worry. He ate the dumplings I made. This battle will be smooth. At this moment, with a swish, he Dao Yuan appeared above the Grand Purity Palace in black with an arrogant attitude. Han Fei, I didn't go to you, but you came to me first. Since you want to fight, do you dare to fight me fair and square? Han Fei roared, why not? There should have been a decisive battle between you and me. He Dao Yuan snorted coldly. In that case, let's enter this place. He Dao Yuan stretched out his hand, and a prepared teleportation array appeared. On Han Fei's side, the kings were surprised that he Dao Yuan wanted to fight Han Fei one-on-one. Suddenly, everyone's heart tightened. Under such circumstances, Han Fei shouldn't have fought in front of all the emperors. He Dao Yuan said, you are also a master of arrays. You should be able to understand this array. The hearts of Xia Xiaochan and the others also sank. How could this be? Who knew what was on the other side of the teleportation array? However, when they were about to speak, they heard Han Fei sneer. Since you want a fair battle, call Swan Qingzi and Yun Tianhe out. How can it be fair without them? On my side, all the emperors are present, and I did not hide anything. Yuan nodded slightly. That's good. Then call Yuan out too. Don't tell me he is not here. Last time, during the expedition to the 100 Demon Clan, Yuan protected the rear of the human race. Maybe Yuan wouldn't participate in their battles, but he wouldn't sit by and watch billions of human beings die. Yuan knew that since he had the intention to destroy the 5 divine palaces, Yuan must have guessed it, and he must be here. Han Fei didn't care. Yuan had taken action once, and he couldn't hide it anymore. Han Fei said, Senior Yuan. Before seeing Yuan himself, Yuan's voice came from the void. He said, I only want to protect the people and don't want to participate in your battles. Yuan sneered. As an emperor, you can't avoid some things even if you want to. After Yuan said that, Swan Kingzi and Yun Tianhe appeared in the distance. Han Fei glanced at the teleportation array and thought that with his current mastery of the great Tao of time, he could even reverse time at the last moment of the teleportation array. He believed that Yuan must have a backup plan. However, didn't he have a backup plan? So, Han Fei looked back at the others. Don't worry. At this moment, Yuan said, Since I'm giving you a chance to decide the winner, shouldn't you show some sincerity and show me the nautical globe? If you win, the inner area will be yours. If I win, the inner area will still be yours. I'll only protect Swan Kingzi and Yun Tianhe. Otherwise, we'll fight to the death. Han Fei sneered. The battle hasn't started yet, and you're already thinking about my nautical globe? If you want to see it, I'll show it to you. Then, Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the nautical globe appeared. Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly, and then a voice appeared in Han Fei's mind. You should know that before we win, the Sword God and the others can't do anything. Otherwise, you can kill Swan Kingzi and Yun Tianhe, but your path will be cut off. Even if they are emperors, their Tao hearts will be obstructed. Han Fei responded, It seems that you are really obsessed. You're threatening the billions of people in the 5 divine palaces. Do you think you deserve to lead the 36 mysterious heavens? Yuan scoffed. Do you think you're any better? Humph! Han Fei snorted and glanced at the Queen of Snails and the others. When I return, I'll take over the inner area. Yuan and Han Fei entered the teleportation array one after another. The moment the two of them entered, the teleportation array collapsed, leaving no chance for the others to react. Xia Xiaochan couldn't help looking into the void, clearly expressing that she wanted Xia Hongzhu and the others to pay attention, because they didn't expect that Han Fei would choose to fight Yuan one-on-one. In fact, when Han Fei and Yuan entered the void, Luo Xiaobai and the others were surprised. The moment Han Fei and Yuan left one after another, the Sword God, Wang Yijian, Kong Shun, the Queen of Snails, and Yuan all took action. Luo Xiaobai was dumbfounded. What's going on? Han Fei and Yuan hadn't won yet. If they took action now, wouldn't they be forcing them to die together? Even Xian Qingzi and Yun Tianhe were stunned. Although they were prepared to destroy the 5 immortal palaces, it wasn't now. Han Fei and Yuan had just left, and these emperors must know the unspoken rules of the battle. If they took action now, they would be forcing them to detonate the 5 immortal palaces right now. Xian Qingzi's face changed drastically. You dare to take action? Are you going to ignore the lives of billions of humans? Are you going to ignore your Taoist heart and Han Fei's path to the human emperor? Yin Tianhe and Xian Qingzi looked at each other and knew that these people didn't play by the rules. They made up their minds at the same time, and the 5 immortal palaces trembled as if a magnitude north earthquake had taken place at the same time. They seemed to be about to collapse in the next second. Also, the void around them showed signs of collapsing. Yin Tianhe cursed, Since we're going to die, let's die together. However, at this moment, the 5 immortal palaces were sealed by a mysterious force at the same time, and the so-called perishing strategy collapsed in an instant. But God of Swords and the others were relieved. Kill. Chapter 2105. When Han Fei entered the teleportation array, he didn't find any danger. This was a super long-distance teleportation array. Although Han Fei didn't know the destination, he could turn back time in the teleportation array at any time, or even forcibly break the array and get out. After a while, what Han Fei worried about happened. The teleportation array had a problem. This was Yi Dao Yuan's scheme, which was to make Han Fei jump into the trap he dug. But he didn't know that this was actually Han Fei's plan too. As long as Yi Dao Yuan was lured away, he would never be able to return to the Grand Pure Wuji. This meant that the moment he stepped into the teleportation formation, this expedition had already been a success. Now, as Han Fei said, this was the final battle. Either he or Yi Dao Yuan would die. Han Fei believed that he couldn't die, so Yi Dao Yuan had to die. At this moment, the second half of the teleportation array was shrouded by dead air. Han Fei had seen this kind of dead air before. It was on the Forbidden Island, similar to the Death Valley that led to the Undying Temple. Han Fei was shocked. If he really went to the Undying Temple, he really couldn't do anything to Yi Dao Yuan. If the enemy was just Yi Dao Yuan himself, it would be fine. But if the enemy was the Undying Temple, he would have to ask his first senior brother for help. Also, Han Fei never expected that Yi Dao Yuan's trump card was the Undying Temple. It was said that the Undying Temple was everywhere. It turned out that their heritage couldn't be found in the chaotic ocean. When a blue halo flowed, Han Fei activated the Tao of Time as soon as he sensed the dead air. At the same time, as he slashed out, the infinite void was broken. The void storm instantly filled the entire teleportation array. The teleportation array collapsed. The two of them didn't dare to enter the infinite void, so they could only break the void storm at the same time, break the teleportation array, and fall out. However, there was another figure that fell out together with it. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, is there a heaven-opening state cultivator? Han Fei frowned. Are they from the Immortal Temple? Fortunately, he reacted fast, otherwise he would have been killed immediately if he went to the end of the teleportation array. This was a sea area that nobody knew where it was. After the three of them fell out, Han Fei said, Yi Dao Yuan, is this your backup plan? Do you think that one more heaven-opening stage, Undying, can kill me? Yi Dao Yuan sneered. You can try. Under Han Fei's feet, within 10,000 kilometers, the air of death was surging. Yi Dao Yuan held the green sword in her hand. This sword was called the Sky-Opening 3 Feet Sword, but it was only an ultra-quality, sea-quelling bizarre treasure. It was incomparable to Han Fei's treasure. What was terrifying was Yi Dao Yuan's strength. Since this person was able to become the master of the Supreme Purity Palace and was once the strongest person in the human race, he naturally lived up to his name. Yi Dao Yuan swung her sword, and Han Fei could feel the aura of the great Tao gathering around her sword. The moment Yi Dao Yuan made his move, the Undying attacked as well. Of course, Han Fei immediately activated the Great Path and increased his combat power by 5 times. With the current Golden Jade Bone, he could completely control it. Swish, Han Fei waved the Tao Convergence sword with his left hand and the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique with his right hand. Ding, bang, the terrifying explosion caused the seawater within a radius of 10,000 kilometers to soar into the sky. Endless sword chi burst out in this place. It was just a tentative strike, and neither side was willing to show weakness. Yi Dao Yuan didn't expect that Han Fei's current strength had reached such a terrifying level. He could fight 2 sky-opening immortals by himself, and he could still do it with ease. The power that Han Fei burst out had reached a terrifying 6 million waves. Of course, pure power couldn't measure a battle between the strong. However, in this strike, Han Fei found that the power of Yi Dao Yuan's Undying seemed to be more than 1. 5 million, less than 1. 8 million. After all, they weren't body cultivators, so this number was normal to Han Fei. Han Fei shouted, Yi Dao Yuan, don't you know that the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique is the nemesis of the Undying? Nemesis? The Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique consumes your lifespan, doesn't it? Even if you're a sky-opening immortal and have a lifespan of 1,000,000 years, you can still try to purify a heaven-opening immortal with the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. At this time, Yi Dao Yuan opened his mouth and swallowed, and a large amount of immortal chi was sucked into his body. His eyes were dark, and his body was full of death. He Dao Yuan's strength was soaring rapidly. Han Fei was not in a hurry. Instead, he stopped and let He Dao Yuan fight. He said lightly, "Since I entered the sky-opening realm, I haven't had a decent battle. Today, let's see how strong you can become." Huh! Yuan's voice seemed to have become the roar of a beast, and half of his body turned into an octopus. Han Fei thought to himself, "This guy seems to be crazy." He even took this path with his spiritual beast. For a time, the sword shadows shot out by He Dao Yuan's 8 tentacles surrounded the 3 feet sword of splitting, forming 9 sword shadows, and the Taoist aura was mixed with unknown death aura. Han Fei flipped his hand, and the immortal killing intent of the heaven-opening realm slashed out. Pung, pung, pung. Explosions rang out continuously, and the 8 sword shadows all collapsed. The baleful immortal even caused the void to collapse. However, the last sword formed a spiral and made a cracking sound as it rubbed against the remaining power of the immortal killing intent. Han Fei's face changed slightly. He Dao Yuan's power was several times stronger than before. At this moment, the power of the explosion might be close to 3.8 million waves. When this sword was out, the area within 30,000 kilometers directly collapsed. Han Fei's immortal killing intent was wiped out. But Han Fei was not in a hurry. He formed a fist seal and broke the sword with force. While Han Fei and He Dao Yuan were fighting, the immortal killing intent turned into a shadow 10,000 meters high, pointing at Han Fei like a ferocious demon. Immortal divine sword. At this moment, He Dao Yuan's power burst out. A sword aura burst out from his dark eyes, which carried the Taoist aura of death. Wherever it passed, the seawater and the void were corroded. This was a skill of Dao, which couldn't be resisted by strength alone. Han Fei waved his left hand, and time turned into a knife. The knife and the sword collided. Seeing that his time was about to be corroded, Han Fei added the power of the cycle of time to the blade of time. On the other side, Han Fei was covered in holy light, and he launched the sacrificing punch. The fist seal was filled with endless healing light. Rumble, bim, cough, cough, cough. Han Fei was forced back by the joint attack of the two. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Fortunately, Han Fei's explosive power was too strong. He shattered He Dao Yuan's immortal killing intent with his left fist and shattered half of the demon shadow with his right fist. He Dao Yuan said, "Time is not invincible. Take another attack from me." He Dao Yuan and the immortal killing intent stretched out their hands. The air of death was connected, and endless darkness appeared in the void. It covered Han Fei. Han Fei thought of something. He held the blade of time in his left hand and the spatial giant in his right hand and slashed at the darkness. But he was sucked in when he touched it. Black hole of death. Han Fei made up a name for this attack. It could absorb light and even time, which was similar to the infinite void. If Han Fei was covered by the power of death, he would have to sacrifice tens of thousands of years of his lifespan and activate the apocalyptic divine technique to block the attack again, even if he didn't die. Also, Han Fei found a problem. He roared, "Is the immortal your external incarnation?" He Dao Yuan sneered. "Did you only find out now? What if I tell you that he's also the master of the immortal pirate crew, the top of the top 10 pirate groups?" Han Fei nodded while retreating. "That makes sense. The immortal pirate crew is the top of the top 10 pirate groups in the chaotic vast ocean. If it only had one king, it would have been destroyed a long time ago." However, Han Fei smiled and said, "What? Do you have other trump cards? Why don't I show you mine?" He Dao Yuan's face slightly changed. Han Fei's strength was terrifying, but he was sure that Han Fei had used a secret technique. Han Fei's only advantage was that he walked on the great path of time. His plan was to cut off time at the moment when Han Fei reversed time and entered the great path of time to return to his peak state. However, Han Fei was going to show his trump card now. Was there someone hiding in his origin sea? But the next moment, Han Fei flipped his hand and a mirror appeared. When the mirror shone, He Dao Yuan's undying avatar disappeared and reappeared in the mirror. The black hole of death that he Dao Yuan and the immortal's external incarnation immediately collapsed. Han Fei grinned. Watch carefully, apocalyptic divine technique. Holy light descended from the sky and fell into the mirror. He Yuan's external incarnation, who had just been sucked into the mirror of infinity, didn't have time to figure out how to break the mirror of infinity when he saw holy light bursting out from all the mirrors he could see. Han Fei sneered in his heart. When he entered the mirror of infinity, it took him a long time to find a way to leave. How did he get out in the blink of an eye? Even if he could destroy a low-quality divine weapon, it would basically kill his immortal clone. Besides, Han Fei didn't give him a chance at all. Didn't you think I couldn't kill him with the apocalyptic divine technique? In the mirror of infinity, an apocalyptic divine technique can be replicated by countless mirrors. I don't believe that he can persist as an immortal. As expected, when the mirror of infinity was filled with divine light, Hiduin's immortal clone spewed out a lot of black mist, which was melted by the holy light as soon as it came out. In an instant, Hidao Yuan's immortal clone began to melt. Chapter 2106. Hidao Yuan was horrified. The undying clone was his biggest trump card. The two of them were connected, and the battle wouldn't be as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. In fact, although Han Fei was strong, with 2 heaven-opening stage cultivators, even if Han Fei's strength was unparalleled and his battle prowess was terrifying, he would not be able to easily resist. However, to his surprise, Han Fei just took out a mirror casually and stored his undying incarnation into it in the blink of an eye. Moreover, he could clearly feel the danger of the undying clone's death. Hidao Yuan wouldn't give up. He grabbed again, and the Xiantian sword appeared. It seemed to have absorbed a lot of energy, and a scorching sword light burst out. Hidao Yuan even dripped a drop of green water from his sword. It merged with the sword light, and Han Fei clearly sensed the light. He felt a sense of danger. Han Fei was determined to destroy Hidao Yuan's undying clone, so he didn't retreat at all. He attacked with the divine aura and raised the phoenix feather-manic blade. The celestial chi poured in crazily, and the sea started burning. Clang, bang, the divine aura collapsed after 3 seconds. Han Fei was shocked. The power of his immortal baleful chi was no longer what it used to be. What was that drop of green liquid? How could it make that Xiantian sword so powerful? Even so, Han Fei didn't retreat. The moment he drew the phoenix feather-manic blade, the sea seemed to become his domain. Clang, with another crisp sound, Han Fei was pushed back for 3,000 miles. Half of his body was numb, but he kept grinning. Hidao Yuan's attack wasn't weak, but he had too many divine weapons. If the ultimate blade hadn't exploded, this would be the best time to stab Hidao Yuan. But even without the ultimate blade, Han Fei still had the infinity water. At this moment, the infinity water also turned into a blade and slashed at Hidao Yuan. Han Fei spat out some water, but he sucked it back in. He was actually stronger than Hidao Yuan if he didn't have that drop of strange liquid. But even so, he blocked Hidao Yuan's attack. Han Fei couldn't help but laugh. Hidao Yuan, is this your trump card? It's time for your undying avatar to fall. Explode. Hidao Yuan was also well-versed in battles. What he was fighting for was momentum and decisiveness. He was looking for an opportunity in the midst of an explosion. Han Fei didn't expect that he would detonate the Empyrean ancient sword. Damn it, the sword was right in front of him, and he suddenly detonated it. The explosion shook his internal organs and made his blood flow in reverse. Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood again. The sword collapsed the void from the explosion, and the void storm swept over him. Fortunately, his flesh and blood were too tyrannical, and his golden jade bone had reached the large success stage. Although he felt a little exhausted, fortunately, the ancient suspended sky sword was not a divine artifact, and he could still resist it. Although there were hundreds of wounds on the surface of his body, they were all minor injuries. Han Fei realized that his outburst was coming to an end, and he had to reverse time. However, in the Infinity Mirror, the apocalyptic divine art had yet to completely annihilate Hidao Yuan's undying avatar. Therefore, taking advantage of this explosion, Han Fei launched the apocalyptic divine technique again to attack the infinity mirror. After all, he was an undying of the heaven opening stage, so it was indeed possible for him to block the attack of the mirror of infinity once. But the chance for him to block it a second time was very slim. Explode, He Dao Yuan roared again. Han Fei thought that He Dao Yuan was going to attack again, but with a crack, 3 cracks appeared on the mirror of infinity. Rumble, in the sky, a big blood-colored crack appeared like a blood-colored abyss, and the sky was bleeding. This was the sign of the Emperor's death. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. You even blew up your heaven-opening stage, Avatar. Han Fei gasped. What AF ** king, ruthless person. Not only did he blow up an ultra-quality, sea-quelling bizarre treasure that was almost comparable to a divine artifact, but now he even blew up his heaven-opening stage avatar. Even if it was an avatar, it was still a heaven-opening stage avatar. After all, the infinity mirror was only a low-quality, divine artifact. It was already good that it didn't explode on the spot. The Grand Purity Palace was also in a fierce battle. The old snail forcibly protected the 5 immortal palaces, and Tai Yuan took down Huabuli, who tried to make trouble. Sha Jiming and old Lady Qiu did not resist. At this time, there was no need for them to resist fearlessly because it was meaningless. And the Sword God, Wang Yijian, and Kong Shun attacked Xian Qingzi and Yun Tianhe. As soon as the Grand Purity Palace stood up, a blood-colored crack appeared in the sky, which was clearly the sign of the Emperor's death. Xia Xiaochan immediately said, "It's not Han Fei." Phew! Suddenly, Luo Xiaobai and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. Zhang Xuanyu screamed, "Son of a B** TCH, is Han Fei's fighting efficiency so high now? How long has it been? He Dao Yuan has been killed so quickly?" Lu Renquang said, "He killed an emperor when he was only in the sea opening stage. I don't think it's strange that he can kill an emperor so quickly." Even Wang Yijian couldn't help but be surprised. Was Han Fei's killing speed faster than his? His sword was still brewing, and Han Fei had already finished the battle? Luo Xiaobai shouted, "He Dao Yuan has died. Grand Pure Wuji, all the immortal palaces surrender now." When Luo Xiaobai and the others breathed a sigh of relief, they didn't know that Han Fei had only killed one of Dao Yuan's avatars. On the battlefield on Han Fei's side, with a thought from him, a time barrier appeared, and he took back the infinity mirror. He took a deep breath and directly entered the time barrier. No matter how strong Han Fei was, in terms of basic combat power, he was still inferior to He Dao Yuan. The gap of tens of thousands of years couldn't be made up so quickly. It was already very good that he could kill He Dao Yuan's undying avatar and force him to blow up the Empyrean hanging sword in less than 10 minutes. However, when he turned back time, Han Fei saw He Dao Yuan coming through time. He shouted, "This is the time I've been waiting for. This is the time when your strength is at its weakest. Let's see how you can take another sword strike from me." In the heaven-opening state, he could observe the river of time, and Han Fei didn't really step into the river of time. He just reversed time for a short time, so it was easier to detect. This time, He Dao Yuan dripped 2 drops of green water in a row, and with the 3 feet opening sword as the carrier, he slashed into time, trying to kill Han Fei. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei was in the river of time and had to use the immortal killing intent again. Bam! Bam! At this moment, the strange time technique broke out, but there were only 2 wisps of immortal killing intent. Just now, when his strength was at its peak, he was pushed back for 3,000 kilometers by the sword, and the immortal killing intent was broken in 3 minutes. This blow was obviously still not enough. However, Han Fei didn't panic. In the river of time, there was enough power of time. With the knife drawing technique, Han Fei pulled out a section of time and turned it into a knife, barely blocking the sword. Then, he immediately reversed time at the moment when He Dao Yuan attacked, but the 3 feet opening sword, which was dripped with 2 drops of green liquid, was only blocked for 1 minute, and then it continued to attack. Fortunately, Han Fei had broken through time at this time, and most of his body had drilled out of the river of time. Clang! Han Fei was hit by the 3 feet opening sword. The moment he jumped out of time, he began to cough up blood. However, fortunately, his reaction speed was fast enough. Once he walked out of time, he could return his peak combat power. This time, unfortunately, because Daiyuan's attack just now was too fast, he could only return it 10 minutes before. The 3 feet opening sword also came out with Han Fei. However, at this moment, Han Fei issued a telepathic thought, and a green wine gourd appeared in front of him. Clang BM, Han Fei was knocked back 10,000 kilometers by this weird Dao. Just now, when he was hit by the 3 feet opening sword, he felt that there was a weird power in his body, trying to absorb his power. He had to forcibly block it with his immortal spiritual chi, and at the same time, cast another heaven awakening divine technique. When the healing divine light fell on him, Han Fei felt that the power was purified. Han Fei had 10 minutes at this moment. He sneered. Daiyuan, it seems that you have a lot of tricks. How many drops of green water do you have? As long as you have more than 100 drops, I will let you go today. If you don't, then prepare to die. Daiyuan's heart also sank. The heaven awakening divine technique was as powerful as ever. How could he have so many of such treasures? When he opened the sky, he used 1 drop and just used 3 drops. How could he block Han Fei with the last drop? The main reason was that Han Fei had a lot of divine weapons with him, which was too annoying. Law World, Invincible Eye. With only 10 minutes left, Han Fei had to go all out. At least, he couldn't give Daiyuan another chance to sneak attack the Origin Sea. His strength doubled again, and because of the Law World, he was 30% stronger. At this moment, Han Fei felt that his strength had reached an unparalleled level. Above the sky, divine chains of order appeared inexplicably, trying to lock Han Fei. Shoot! What's going on? Anyway, Han Fei had no time to activate the immortal killing intent, so he could only point with 2 fingers and blast out a Dao Unification Sword Strike, and then immediately withdraw the Law World. At the moment when the Law World disappeared, the divine chains of order in the sky hadn't disappeared, but they didn't continue to attack. Han Fei couldn't help but think of the old snail's words. Once he dared to use his full strength, the great Dao here would dare to split him. It turned out that it was true. He didn't want to be almost split by the great Dao here before he was killed by Daiyuan. That would be a great loss. However, after all, he had already used the Dao Unification Sword Strike. Daiyuan could only fight. He shouted, Han Fei, if I die today, you won't be able to live either. Life Unity, Sword 1. At that moment, Daiyuan took out an 8th grade divine pill and swallowed it. Then, the medicinal power was released in the blink of an eye. His body disintegrated, his spiritual beast disintegrated, and the 3-foot sword of splitting heaven collapsed, all of which merged into his great path. Ding! Daiyuan's life-risking sword lasted for more than 10 breaths when it collided with the great Dao Coalescence Sword. Han Fei took advantage of this time to reverse time and return to the peak. In the instant that he reversed time, another wave of celestial, baleful, immortal shot out. At the same time, the Phoenix Feathermanic Saber slashed out. The Yin-Yang Reincarnation Saber also slashed towards that sword. On the 13th breath, Daiyuan's Dao, sword formed from his own Dao and life force, finally shattered the Dao Convergent Sword. In 1 breath, he had broken through the baleful immortal. In 2 breaths, he had broken the Phoenix Feather Wild Blade. In the 3rd second, as soon as Han Fei slashed out with the Yin-Yang Reincarnation Knife, the sword light began to twist by itself. Qiu Ming. He could only hear an extremely angry roar coming from the sword radiance. It should be someone who hated Qiu Ming to the core. Qiu Ming? Old Lady Qiu. It seemed that there was something wrong with the pill that Daiyuan swallowed just now. The sword radiance was so weak that it was almost extinguished. But even so, this was the strike that Daiyuan poured all his remaining lifespan into. Even if it was about to extinguish, it was still extremely powerful. Han Fei carried the huge green thunder wine gourd and frantically injected immortal spiritual energy into it. Han Fei roared, "Even if you try your best, it's just a sky splitting heaven. You can't kill me." BM, the mighty ripples crushed hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and this place was completely covered by the void storm. Rumble, in the sky, cracks of Tao burst out again. In the void storm, Han Fei was covered in blood, and no one knew where the gourd had flown to. Half of his body was cut open. Bah, don't you know what level you are? Tianchi. Chapter 2107. After He Daoyuan died, Han Fei cursed. The apocalypse divine art descended from the sky, and his injuries were healing at a visible rate. The half of his body that was almost cut apart was also healing. If it was someone else, they could rebuild their body after being cut in half with a little energy. But for Han Fei, this was already an extremely serious injury. His bloodline level was so high that it was unique in the chaotic ocean. His golden jade bone was as strong as the old snails. But even so, under his multiple attacks, he almost failed to block He Daoyuan's sword. If Madame Chiu hadn't done something to his 8th grade divine pill, he would have been terrified. After a while, Han Fei spent 2,000 years of vitality to restore himself to his peak. He realized that strength wasn't everything, and it couldn't break all techniques. His strength was more than twice as strong as He Daoyuan's at his peak. But in a real battle, he couldn't shake He Daoyuan's swordsmanship at all. A trace of doubt flashed across Han Fei's mind. Was strength really worthless? This doubt only flashed past. From the battle with He Daoyuan, his strength wasn't bad, and his explosive power wasn't weak either, but it wasn't as sharp as a sword cultivator's. In addition, he shouldn't always fight in his strongest state in the future. At the heaven-opening state, he could see through time. This meant that he wasn't safe when he turned back time. So the next time he used his Tao, if possible, it would be better not to use 5 times his strength at the same time. Otherwise, although he was strong, he wouldn't be able to maintain it for long. Today, Han Fei's opportunity to win was mainly because He Daoyuan cultivated an undying external incarnation, which was countered by him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in a good situation if he had to fight 1 against 2. After all, I've only been in the heaven-opening state for a short time. If I didn't have these treasures, I'd probably be on par with He Daoyuan. Han Fei made a quick judgment and took out the navigator. With the operation of the navigator, Han Fei found and opened He Daoyuan's origin sea. Because He Daoyuan wasn't a pure sword cultivator, his origin sea was different from the sword cultivator's sword palace. And it was very big, the biggest one Han Fei had ever seen. Han Fei looked at the 270,000 kilometers of the origin sea and thought that if this guy wanted to turn into a star, even if he started now, it would take at least tens of thousands of years, and then it would need more resources than he had to develop the origin sea to successfully turn into a star. At this moment, this sea of origin was in utter chaos, and there was no sign of life at all. It was obvious that He Daoyuan had used all his power in the final attack, and he had even detonated his own lifespan. However, it wasn't like He Daoyuan didn't have any resources left. He could detonate flexible resources, but there were some fixed resources that he couldn't use. For example, the mineral veins in his origin sea. Of course, it was different from his own origin sea, He Daoyuan's origin sea. It was just like how he had done in the past, allocating resources. Therefore, in terms of grade, He Daoyuan's origin sea was 1 grade lower than his. Han Fei's projection collected the resources, and he himself was attracted by a drop of green liquid that hadn't been consumed yet. This drop of green liquid was floating. It was probably He Daoyuan's last burst of power with this thing. However, he didn't expect that the 8th grade divine pill he got from Old Lady Chiu was actually an 8th grade poisonous pill. As a result, this drop of green liquid was useless. Han Fei took a closer look, and information appeared in his eyes. Name: Invisible Sword Fluid Introduction. The origin of the sword intent born in the Emperor's Sword embryo. The invisible sword fluid contains the Emperor's Sword intent and has the ability to break defenses and cut lives. Quality: None effect. When used with sword aura, it can burst out several times the true meaning of the sword and cut the enemy invisibly. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder why He Daoyuan's sword intent was so strong. Han Fei thought he was too weak and that there was a cultivation gap of tens of thousands of years between him and He Dao Yuan. It turned out that this wasn't the case. It turned out that this guy had such a powerful treasure. However, it was a pity that he didn't walk on the path of swordsmanship, so the effect of this thing would definitely be greatly reduced in his hands. If he gave his thing to Nez's clone, it might have unexpected effects in the future. In addition to the invisible sword fluid, Han Fei thought he had obtained another thing, which turned out to be the sea-quelling painting. In He Dao Yuan's Origin Sea, there were a total of 6 of them. The sea-quelling painting? It seems that it's time to collect the sea-quelling painting. When the second sign of the death of an emperor appeared in the sky, the kings of the Grand Purity Palace were all shocked. How come another sign of the death of an emperor appeared so soon? Did Wang Yijian kill the enemy? However, when they looked again, Wang Yijian hadn't taken action yet, and neither Xian Qingzi nor Yun Tianhe had died. Then where the F*CK did this sign come from? The kings couldn't help but look at Xia Xiaochan again, but Xia Xiaochan also looked confused. She shook her head and said, "It's not him." Xia Xiaochan knew very well whether Han Fei was alive or not, because Han Fei had the life tablet with her. If something really happened to Han Fei, Xia Xiaochan would definitely know. At this moment, Wang Yijian broke out. It seemed that his attack was all about killing with one blow. Kong Shun and Xian Qingzi were fighting fiercely. When Xian Qingzi was suppressed and had no time to distract himself, a dazzling sword light flashed in front of him. Xian Qingzi only took a glance at the sword light, and then he fell into a trance. Then his divine soul seemed to be broken, and his body and divine soul were swept into nothingness by the sword. In fact, what the bystanders didn't know was that a sword mark had appeared in Xian Qingzi's Origin Sea. A piercingly cold sword intent had blossomed in his Origin Sea, slicing his Origin Sea open. Crack, another bloody eye appeared in the sky, and the sky was full of blood. Who would have thought that 3 emperors would die in a day? Seeing this, Yun Tianhe realized that the 5 palaces couldn't detonate at all. All the arrays of the palaces were controlled by an invisible force. With the sword god personally intercepting him, his state was no better than Xian Qingzi's. Wang Yijian could kill Xian Qingzi with one sword strike, so naturally, he could also kill him with one sword strike. Yun Tianhe shouted, "Sword god, don't force me." The sword god said leisurely, "I'm not forcing you. The death of an emperor is the rise of countless people. You should have thought that the Grand Pure Wuji would rise to the top, but there would also be a time when it would decline. This place should not be controlled by you." Qi-La, the sword god's hands came together, and thousands of miles of the void turned into a sword. The Tao of the sword condensed, and the sword Qi filled the world. Kong Shun's scepter struck the sky, and he also attacked Yun Tianhe. The old snail's Tao was released, and the entire void became sticky. Yun Tianhe couldn't escape even if he wanted to. Wang Yijian raised his sword during the battle, and now that he was killing emperors, his sword intent was at its peak. The 4 emperors came out at the same time, and each one was stronger than Yun Tianhe. How could he resist? Rumble, Yun Tianhe's death symbolized the end of an era. It symbolized that the human race had walked out of the 100,000 years of decline. Huabili said, "I surrender." The golden crow heaven surrenders. Puchi Huabulai hadn't even finished his words when Wang Yijian had already killed him. Who should be kept alive and who should be killed? Everyone was clear in their hearts. You surrender just because you say so. Who do you think you are? Huabili couldn't believe it. He was a king, and a very strong one at that. How could these people kill him so easily? With Huabili as an example, Sha Jimeng, Old Lady Qiu, and the others didn't resist at all. Even if they died, they couldn't lose face. Since the Heaven Creator had fallen, how could the remaining kings of the Grand Pure and Everlasting Sect compare to the kings of the human army? They could crush them in numbers. Hong Yu shouted. The human emperor said that no king should be left alive. Kill them all. As a result, cracks appeared in the sky one after another. However, the kings of the Heaven Creator realm didn't attack anymore. There were only a few venerables who were stubbornly resisting. No one knew what they were resisting. The battle only lasted for an hour before it was declared over. A venerable shouted, "The human race is unified, and the world is one." A king said, "If the venerable surrenders, you can still live. Ordinary people, don't panic. The human race will be unified soon. The grand, pure, and everlasting sect will rule the human world. Then, the human emperor will be established, and the people will surrender." Han Fei came back 2 hours later. Fortunately, he could find a location from the constantly appearing celestial phenomena. Otherwise, it might take him a few days to return. When Han Fei returned, the sky-sealing array of the 5 immortal palaces had been unlocked, and the battle had subsided. Only the blood-colored rain hadn't stopped. The venerables were being inspected. The billions of people in the 5 immortal palaces were all nervous at this moment. The pride of countless people in the Grand Pure Palace was shattered, but no one dared to say a word against Han Fei. At this moment, there were kings everywhere, and the 5 emperors were here. Who dared to say anything? Most people just looked gloomy and didn't look very happy. When Han Fei returned, the sword god and the others all looked at him. Xia Xiaochan and the others who had been waiting anxiously greeted him. Xia Xiaochan asked, "Are you okay? Why are there 2 signs of emperor death?" Zhang Xuanyu said, "If you hadn't left your life tablet, we would have thought something had happened to you." The old snail also said, "You killed 2 emperors?" Han Fei smiled faintly. He Daoyuan had a heaven creator realm external incarnation, but it has already died. Tai Yuan couldn't help but ask, "I just want to know, how did you make these 5 immortal palaces not be controlled by them? If it weren't for your promise, we wouldn't have done it so easily." Han Fei said with a smile, "Keep this a secret." Han Fei thought to himself, "Do I have to tell you that I went through the back door again? Asking the venerable emperor to do it for me shouldn't be considered cheating, right?" Chapter 21:08. After the civil strife of the human race was settled, Han Fei had no conflict with the sword god and the others at all. The magical existence of sword cultivators had no interest in this type of battle at all. All they cared about was swordsmanship. The reason why the sword god wanted to resist Tai Ching Wuji was that from the beginning, he felt that Tai Ching Wuji's behavior of dividing the human race was unreasonable. What the sword god and the others valued more was going out. The swordsmanship that they could touch was gone. Staying in the chaotic ocean, they felt nothing except the coldness of being at the top. The old snail's purpose was to carry forward the Giant Beast clan. Since Han Fei had the incarnation of the Giant Beast clan, it was a long-term solution to stop the human race from competing with the Giant Beast clan. Besides, Han Fei was very strong, controlled the human race, and could leave the chaotic ocean, which laid the foundation for the Giant Beast clan to go to the Sea Realm in the future. Tai Yuan was a guy who basically never participated in any kind of battle. He only occasionally did some trivial things, but in the end, he became the final winner. He Daoyuan and the others couldn't be envious of him because he had always been like this and followed this rule for tens of thousands of years. The last one was Kong Shen. Since Han Fei had chosen to accept them, he wouldn't attack them again. In the face of the unknown sea realm, as the natives of the chaotic ocean, they should work together to deal with the outside world. However, Han Fei couldn't completely trust Kong Shun. But if he left the chaotic ocean in the future, Han Fei would definitely take him out. The war ended. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan came to the mermaid royal family. At this time, it was impossible for the human race and the mermaid royal family to start a war. On the human race's side, Han Fei was very famous. It was really hard to say whether the mermaid royal family could defeat all the heaven-opening realms. In particular, Xia Hongzhu hadn't recovered from her injury, so it was impossible for her to be an enemy of the human race. Different from the last time, Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan came back in a dignified manner. Everyone in the mermaid royal family knew that Han Fei had split open the sky. Besides, today, the 4 sovereigns died, but Han Fei could appear, which meant that Han Fei won and the human race was really unified by him. At this point, Han Fei was the emperor of the human race. Ordinary mermaids didn't even dare to look at Han Fei's face because they couldn't help but want to worship him. Along the way, no one dared to stop them. Han Fei and Xia Xiaochan came to Xia Hongzhu's palace. Han Fei saw the face that he didn't want to see the most. She snorted at Chun Huangdian and finally ignored him arrogantly. Chun Huangdian was indifferent, and he also put on a disdainful smile. Even though Han Fei killed 2 emperors on his own, Chun Huangdian still looked down on Han Fei. Xia Hongzhu's eyes fell on Xia Xiaochan's abdomen as soon as she saw her. Xia Hongzhu didn't look away until Xia Xiaochan didn't know what to say. After a long while, Xia Hongzhu asked, "When did this happen?" Xia Xiaochan said in a low voice, "Just a few years ago." Xia Hongzhu didn't know that Xia Xiaochan was pregnant with the son of a god, so she snorted. "You're not allowed to leave the chaotic ocean before the baby is born." Xia Hongzhu said that to Xia Xiaochan. She meant that Xia Xiaochan had to stay even if she wanted to leave the chaotic ocean as soon as possible. After all, the agreement between you and I was that if you wanted to leave, you had to first conquer a world in the outside world. In fact, the dangers of the outside world were still fresh in Xia Hongzhu's memory. Xia Xiaochan shouted, "Mom, we're here to tell you that I won't leave in 100 years. I won't leave within 100 years. However, the Yin clan's enmity isn't just your enmity. I'm going to get my revenge too." "You?" At this moment, Han Fei said casually, "Me." Han Fei said, "The royal family of mermaids, and I have the same goal in dealing with the Yin family. So, I'm here to tell mother-in-law that the girl is pregnant, and to ask you to share the information about the Yin family with me." Xia Hongzhu couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. "Oh, you're going to deal with the Yin family? The Yin family has a venerable emperor." Han Fei grinned and looked at Chun Huangdian. "Aren't experts meant to be stepped on? Venerable emperors are strong, but I'm not stagnant." Xia Hongzhu slightly shook her head. "The ocean realm is indescribably vast. The Yin family has 2 venerable emperors and more than 10 heaven-opening experts in one domain. You'd better think about how to find a place to settle down after you get out. As for the Yin family, you'll know about it after you settle down." Han Fei realized that the Yin family was indeed powerful. 100,000 years ago, they had 2 venerable emperors and more than 10 heaven-opening experts. With such strength, wouldn't they be able to suppress the entire chaotic azure sea by themselves? After all, including the Beast King, the chaotic ocean realm only had 1 venerable emperor and a dozen heaven-opening experts. Yet, they couldn't even compare to a family in the ocean realm. Since Xia Hongzhu had said that, Han Fei didn't ask any more questions. Han Fei could tell that Xia Hongzhu was exaggerating the dangers of the ocean realm to scare him. However, if he put himself in his shoes, he would realize that he was also in the heaven-opening realm. If venerable sovereigns did not appear, the 10 heaven-opening realm masters of the Yin family might not be able to kill him. Besides, he wouldn't go to the Yin family for trouble as soon as he got out. There had to be a serious information asymmetry between the ocean realm and the chaotic ocean realm. For example, after the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven came out of the worldlet, the strength of their citizens skyrocketed. It was because the concentration of spiritual energy in the chaotic ocean realm was higher, the strength of marine creatures was stronger, and they had access to more resources and cultivation techniques. The principle was the same between the chaotic ocean realm and the ocean realm. This was the difference in level. Of course, Han Fei didn't plan to go there immediately. He had just opened a sky and had a lot of things to do. In addition to accompanying Xia Xiaochan to give birth, he still had many techniques to cultivate, such as the void body refinement art. If he cultivated it now, he would definitely have a lot of room for growth. 3 months later, the chaotic ocean, the inner sea. First, the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven came out, and the Cloud Sea Divine tree slowly moved to the sea area that the Grand Pure Wuji and the others used to enjoy. After 3 months, ordinary people found that no one could threaten them. Only some special exchanges and institutions were attacked, and ordinary people were not affected. Seeing that their lives were safe, ordinary people didn't care who controlled the 36 black heavens. Besides, they were quite looking forward to the immortal palace in the outer domain. Someone sighed. "In the future, we will have to integrate with those guys from the outer domain. It's so uncomfortable." "Hush! Are you crazy? A new order has been issued. If anyone from the inner domain discriminates against the outer domain, the punishment will be quite severe. From now on, everyone belongs to the human race, and there is no so-called division between the inner domain and the outer domain. Do you understand? Someone sneered. Who's eavesdropping? But after all, those people from the outer domain are not talented. When they come, they want to divide our resources and come to our land in large quantities, which will lower our standard of living for no reason. What standard of living do you think you are? As soon as this person finished speaking, an explorer had already appeared in front of this person with an unfriendly look. This person said, "The human emperor's order has abolished the division between the inner and outer domain. I don't think you are very happy about it. Then go mine." This person was shocked and hurriedly said, "I'm just complaining." Humph. It's because of the complaints of people like you that the human race is divided. You're just a law enforcer. Do you really think you're a noble person? I'm from the outer domain, and I'm in charge of surveillance. Do you think you can run away? Then this person grabbed this person and carried him away like a chick. Someone shook his head. I've reminded him so many times, but he just doesn't listen. Isn't he asking for trouble? Someone sighed. It's good enough that he's still alive. Does he really think this is the old Grand Purity Palace? Someone said, in the future, don't ever say such things again. Mining for 10 years, who can withstand that? If the human race wanted to integrate, they had to maintain the same voice. So far, the Grand Purity Palace alone had caught more than 500,000 people. These people would all be detained for mining and transformation. Mining with them were a large number of volunteers from the outer domain. Many of them were not strong enough and lacked resources, so they could only earn resources through mining. Han Fei just hoped that these people could face each other in the process, integrate with each other, and eliminate the boundary between the inner and outer domains. Suddenly, less than half an hour after this person from the Grand Purity Palace was taken away, the Divine Palace suddenly shook. After another hour or so, the shaking finally stopped slightly, but countless people in the Sky Palace sighed endlessly with emotion. What has happened? Someone was surprised. What's going on? Is the Divine Palace unstable? Someone was puzzled. Look around. Suddenly, someone pointed at the branches and leaves that were slowly emerging in the distant sky and exclaimed, "Look, what a huge tree! It's countless times larger than the heavenly fault star tree." Hiss! I can't see the top at all. Is this still a tree? Why don't I see the trunk? Are you blind? That branch is not a trunk. I mean the trunk. When the huge trunk of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree appeared, it shocked the people from the Grand Purity Palace and the Infinite Palace. On the floating island, there were people everywhere to watch the tree. At this moment, a mighty voice came from the sky. I am Han Fei. From today on, the 36 divine palaces of the human race will return. The human race will welcome the first great integration in history in 100,000 years. Chapter 2109. This day was destined to be the most extraordinary one in the history of the Azure Sea. Many heavenly palaces and islands were flying towards the inner sea. The enormous Cloud Sea Divine Tree even carried 1,000,000 miles of seaborne grassland and finally reached its destination. In the outer land, in the heavenly palaces, all the humans near the edge of the islands were watching. Someone exclaimed, "The spirit chi here is so dense. I feel that my strength will skyrocket if I cultivate here." Someone pointed at the sky. Look, that should be the legendary Cloud Sea Divine Tree of the Waterwood Heaven. Unfortunately, I can only see a cluster of leaves. If I have time, I must take a look at it in its entirety. Someone snickered. Bullsh asterisk T. I heard that even a half-monarch can't see the length of a single branch of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. You want to see the whole tree? Suddenly, someone exclaimed, "Look, dragon roars are coming from the heavenly palace." Is it dragon subduing heaven? While people were enjoying the view, they saw a young man flying by with an enormous fire tree on his shoulder. Someone exclaimed, "Is that a tree too? How come the leaves are burning?" Someone was surprised. That tree can fly. Someone was speechless. It's obviously carried by an overlord. It should be a tree from the Golden Crow Heaven, but I don't know why it flew here. The Golden Crow Heaven. Would Beely have been defeated by Wang Yijian? Without a leader, the overlords fought for supremacy. One should know that whoever sat on the throne of the palace of immortals and owned the palace of immortals, how could they be weak? Someone yelled, "I'm the eldest disciple of the Fire Emperor. I should enter the heavenly palace. You don't even acknowledge me. Are you trying to betray your master?" Someone sneered, "You're quite bold." Quabuli helped the wicked, and even the human emperor couldn't tolerate him. "I'm surprised that you, the eldest disciple, haven't taken him away yet. Do you still want the immortal palace? Who do you think you are?" Someone yelled in a low voice, "Strength will speak for whoever rules the heavenly palace." Someone said in disdain, "You think you can decide who will enter the heavenly palace? The heavenly palace has no owner. There must be an overlord here." At this moment, the sky turned fiery red as a gigantic fiery tree flew over. "Hiss! Fire, fire, divine tree!" The flame divine tree that had disappeared for more than 80,000 years had reappeared. While the group of supremacies were dumbfounded, they saw a bald youth carrying the tree as he descended. The young man's strength was only in the early stages of the venerable realm. He carried the flaming god tree and looked at the golden crow heaven immortal palace. "Are you guys waiting for me?" Someone was confused. "Who are you?" The bald man laughed and said, "My name is Jin Wu. I'm here to take over the golden crow heaven." Hiss! Everyone was speechless. Someone looked at the baldy like he was an idiot and said, "Do you think you could be the master of the golden crow sky just because you're named Golden Crow? You're just a mid-level venerable. What are you thinking?" However, the golden crow replied, "The human emperor is my uncle master." "Oh, what?" "Hiss, little baldy, don't joke around." The golden crow said, "Firstly, I might be the reincarnation of the master of the golden crow heaven who perished 80,000 years ago. Secondly, my teacher is the life queen of the waterwood heaven. My teacher and the human emperor are fellow disciples, so the human emperor is my uncle master. Is that okay? Look, I've even carried the tree here." The venerables, seeing that no one responded to him, the golden crow shook his head slightly, carried the tree, and went straight to the immortal palace. The venerables were dumbfounded. When the golden crow completely disappeared in the immortal palace, a venerable heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I told you. How can the immortal palace be controlled by us? The reincarnation of the first master of the immortal palace has come out. Why are we still fighting for it?" The golden crow heaven was controlled by someone. This was originally the golden crow's territory, but Han Fei returned it to him. Song Kaiyuan of the Wuji heaven and the Taishan heaven went to take over. Han Fei wanted Zhang Xuanyu to go, but Zhang Xuanyu didn't go. Song Kaiyuan, who had just transcended the tribulation of the Taishan heaven, took over. The Grand Purity Palace, on the other hand, was taken over by Jianhui. Except for the 10-colored heaven that even Han Fei couldn't find, the 35 immortal palaces of the human race were now merged together. On this day, above the sky, Han Fei's voice sounded above the heads of trillions of humans. Today is the day when the 36 immortal palaces of the human race are unified. From today on, the human race has no more foreign enemies. The 100 demons have been destroyed, the seabed human race has surrendered, and the mermaid royal family has reached a peace consensus with the human race. In the main cities, villages, and towns of the major immortal palaces, countless people looked up and listened. Han Fei said, 100,000 years ago, the human race went east on a large scale. The former human king led some of the human race and left this world. From today on, the human race no longer needs to hang high above the 9 heavens. People return to their homeland, and the human race should also return to the dust, so that our homeland can rebuild its foundation and thrive. Huh? Countless people were dumbfounded. What? The floating island is not floating. Someone was surprised. Are we going to land on the sea? Isn't this dangerous? Someone thought, now that the foreign enemies have been eliminated and the internal conflicts of the human race have been resolved, it seems that we really don't need to float in the sky anymore. Someone said firmly, landing on the sea, this is a great arrangement. When we land on the sea, the strong will definitely clear the surrounding sea and create a large safe sea area. This will be more helpful for us to go to sea to hunt. Besides, the land is connected, and all kinds of trade are more convenient than a group of main cities flying in the sky. Han Fei said leisurely, "From today on, the 36 immortal palaces of the human race will exchange what they need. The 36 immortal palaces' combat skills and cultivation methods below the heaven level must be put on the market at a low price or even sold for free. Since the human race has been unified, the major immortal palaces will no longer be selfish. Cultivation methods and combat skills above the heaven level are also open to the public. However, they need to be appropriately cultivated according to the aptitude, strength, and talent of the cultivator. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult for the weak to cultivate, which is not good." Wow, the trillions of people were all in an uproar. Han Fei's move was very important. How many ordinary people could easily get a heaven-level cultivation method? Most people just wanted to survive. Even in the world of cultivation, the strong were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. They couldn't cultivate heaven-level cultivation methods, nor could they get them. Below the heaven level, the aptitude and potential of the cultivators were not very important, but most people couldn't get good cultivation methods. Now, Han Fei sold all the cultivation methods below the heaven level at a low price, and even gave them free, so that countless people who wanted to learn better cultivation methods and combat skills would have a large number of cultivation methods and combat skills to practice. Han Fei even put the first 3 levels of the void fishing art among these cultivation methods. Wasn't the void temple selecting disciples? As the selection of the 13th disciple, he should start now. Finally, Han Fei issued the last decree. From today on, because of the huge difference in strength between those above the venerable realm and those below the venerable realm, in order to prevent the strong from messing up the laws, I order that the human race is divided into 2 realms. In the heaven realm, only the immortal palaces remain, for the kings and venerables to live. Below the venerable realm, everyone is in the human world. In the heaven realm, there is a south heaven gate in the human world. Anyone who is a venerable can enter the heaven realm through the south heaven gate. Those above the venerable realm are not allowed to attack the human world at will. If the human world encounters a disaster, there will be strong people from the heaven realm coming. In the human world, all families above the venerable realm are forbidden to exist, let alone use the venerable realm as family resources. Anyone who violates this will be punished. Han Fei pondered for a long time before deciding on this last decree. On the one hand, it was because there was indeed a huge gap between the venerable realm and the realms below it. On the other hand, Han Fei had to give ordinary people a goal. Now that there were no strong enemies outside, he couldn't really let them live and work in peace. After all, this was the world of cultivators. As long as you were born in this world, you had to cultivate. Therefore, the South Heaven Gate was a goal, the starting point for mortals to become strong. In addition, the human race had a disadvantage. That was the prosperity of families. Now all the major immortal palaces and main cities were full of families. The family masters gathered resources and used resources to create some useless people, which was much better than personal experience. In short, Han Fei pursued the principle of equality in the human world. Hum, hum, hum. At that moment, the immortal palaces were sinking one after another. First, the main cities descended to the height of the towns. Then the 36 towns gathered, followed by countless villages. How to put the floating islands together would be arranged by the kings. Anyway, when they reached the sea, they would have to reclaim the sea and reassemble all the main cities. Ordinary people didn't have such high acceptance and imagination, so they all walked out of their homes and waited for the changes in the immortal palaces. When the immortal palaces really fell into the sea one after another, changing from the floating islands to land, Han Fei couldn't help but smile. This was the original appearance of the human world. Luo Xiaobai and the others stood beside Han Fei. Luren Kuang said, "I'm not used to it. From now on, the floating islands will be gone?" Zhang Xuanyu scoffed. "Are you stupid? Aren't there still immortal palaces? But this immortal palace should be expanded, right?" Haha, fortunately, I didn't become the master of this immortal palace. Otherwise, what's the point of guarding a small island? Luo, Xiaobai added. The 36 immortal palaces only exist in name. In the future, the heaven realm will just become a direction for people to work towards. Anyway, I don't want to live in the heaven realm. I want to live in the human world. It's interesting to get along with those people. At this time, Wang Yijin walked over. His purpose was also simple. He looked at Han Fei and said simply, "When will you go east?" Han Fei looked at Xia Xiaochan. "How about giving me 100 years?" Wang Yijin nodded slightly. "Okay, when your child is born." Chapter 21:10. For Wang Yijin and the others at the heaven opening stage, having a lifespan of 1,000,000 years was nothing. However, before that, Han Fei found the sword god and Tai Yuan. Han Fei said, "Seniors, I have one more thing to ask." The sword god asked, "What is it?" Han Fei said, "I want to know the origin of the sea-quelling painting." The sea-quelling painting? Tai Yuan couldn't help but say, "So it's this thing? That's also from the Imperial Palace. However, except that it's a small world, the sea-quelling painting doesn't seem to have any secrets." Oh, Han Fei was a little puzzled. The sea-quelling paintings were available in every immortal palace. There should be 36 of them, and each sea-quelling painting was tens of thousands of kilometers in size. Han Fei wondered if this was someone's origin sea. If it was, there might be some secrets in it. Tai Yuan said, "This painting came from the Imperial Palace. When we got it, we also studied it, but we didn't find any secrets. But we were afraid that there were mysteries in it. We didn't want to control this painting, so we divided it into 36 parts." The sword god said, "The kings studied it together for hundreds of years, but they didn't find the mystery. Do you think it really wants the origin sea?" Han Fei nodded. "Yes." Tai Yuan said, "More than 10,000 years after we became kings, after we had a certain understanding of the origin sea, we pieced the sea-quelling painting together again and exchanged it for research. Although it was too similar to the origin sea, the king's origin sea didn't connect to the star sea, so the sea-quelling painting did point us in a direction. The sky-opening painting may be to create a sky in the origin sea, where the sun rose and the moon set. However, after studying it again, we only found this. Later, when we entered the Imperial Palace, there was a battle. The yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven entered the abyssal chasm, and the sea-quelling painting could no longer be pieced together. What? Do you have an idea? Exchange research. Han Fei couldn't help but think. So the yin-yang heaven's share should have belonged to the Brahma sound heaven, right? He wondered what the yin-yang heaven's share was like. Han Fei said, "I want to study it. If it is the origin sea, can it still be separated?" Tai Yuan smiled and said, "Logically speaking, with the origin sea separated like this, how can it still survive? Our guess is that this is only the origin sea of that person from the Arch Palace. Although he has fallen, the origin sea will not. It was only sealed in this painting by that expert." Chu Hao's origin sea? Han Fei couldn't help but be suspicious, but he also had something to ask him. After so many years, the sea-quelling painting should be reunited. Han Fei said, "Seniors, can you lend me the sea-quelling painting?" The sword god had no interest in the sea-quelling painting and threw it out casually. "If you want a complete sea-quelling painting, you may have to look for 10-colored sky." Tai Yuan also took out the sea-quelling painting and said, "We've guessed that even if this is the origin sea of Emperor, it's still a treasure. However, the spiritual energy and resources in the sea-quelling painting were sparse, and the only things worth studying were the dangerous places. It seems to coincide with the great Daos of our 36 immortal palaces, as well as some great Daos that the 36 of us did not walk. But now that we've reached the sea-quelling stage, other great Daos are not very meaningful. Everyone knows that the great Daos are chosen by people. Just looking at the sea-quelling painting is not of much reference value." Han Fei couldn't help frowning. Tai Yuan and the sword god were both heaven-opening state powerhouses. The sea-quelling painting had been in their hands for so many years, so they must have studied it countless times. Even they didn't think it was of much use. Was there really no secret in the sea-quelling painting? However, no matter whether it was useful or not, Han Fei felt that he'd better get it and study it. After bidding farewell to Tai Yuan and the Sword God, Han Fei returned to the Immortal Palaces. At this moment, the Immortal Palaces gathered not far away from each other. The lords were opening a relatively large space gap to put all the Immortal Palaces in. In the outside world, only an empty gate was left, which was called the South Heaven Gate. When Han Fei entered the space gap, he scanned with his perception. Good heavens! Except for the 35 Immortal Palaces, almost all the venerables in the Heaven Realm had a floating island as their cultivation place. Han Fei was speechless. If there was a venerable in the future who could bring a small floating island here, how many floating islands would they get? Han Fei shouted, "Those people who are moving the floating islands don't occupy the land of the main cities of the 36 Immortal Palaces. If something happens in the future, they may have to fly up here. Your Majesty, we know. We dug these out from a levitating stone mine." Han Fei was relieved when he heard this. He thought these people had dug all the floating islands in the human world. If they were just dug from the floating stone vein, it wouldn't matter. However, Han Fei looked at the space gap that was getting bigger and bigger. He wondered how big this place would be if every venerable got a small floating island here in the future. Looking at the scene of hundreds of small floating islands surrounding the Immortal Palaces, Han Fei felt a little dreamy. Why did the Heaven Realm look like a palace? Luo Xiaobai and the others were helping to open up a small world, but they didn't get their own floating island here. It was mainly because Xia Xiaochan bragged to them that it was more comfortable to stay in the human world. Staying in a place like the Heaven Realm, they might not see anyone for a day and would be bored to death. Luo Xiaobai and the others thought so none of them planned to take root here. When Han Fei arrived, Xia Xiaochan shouted, "Don't just stand there. Help me open it up." There were two main steps to opening a space gap. First, like blowing bubbles, you had to expand the space within a certain range, which would cause the barrier of this space and the barrier of the real world to become thinner. So the second step was to strengthen the space gap, which required another space barrier to be opened outside the space. But in any case, in the final analysis, it was to separate a layer between the real world and the void. It was not easy to do when one was in the Venerable Realm, but when one reached the Sea Expansion Realm, everyone could understand the relationship between the real world and the void and find the balance point, so it was much easier to open it up. Han Fei was not interested in doing this. He said, "You don't live here. Why do you bother?" Then Han Fei said, "Kings gather." After a moment, everyone gathered in the Yin-Yang Heaven. Looking at the shabby appearance of the Yin-Yang Heaven, the kings thought to themselves, "You've never lived in an immortal palace, have you? Why don't you build your own house?" More than 90,000 years ago, the Yin-Yang Heaven still had a yard, but now there was only a house left. Besides, this house was obviously built by Jiang Linxian back then. Except for the house, there was not even a puppet here. Everyone was speechless. Sure enough, people didn't need puppets to serve them even if they didn't live here. The Snow Lady asked, "Your Majesty, what's the matter that requires all of us to come here?" Han Fei said, "I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can lend me the sea-quelling painting for me to study." Since the sea-quelling painting was reunited more than 80,000 years ago, it has never been pieced together again. Huang Jie said, "Isn't that thing useless? I've studied it thousands of times. Except that it can serve as a small world, it's useless." Lei Qing said, "Your Majesty, if you need it, you can take it." In the early years, this painting has been studied by the kings twice, each time for hundreds of years. We even exchanged our research, but no one was able to figure it out. Even Han Xian said, "That thing, I haven't been able to figure it out either. Your father's painting is with me, but I'm smarter than them. I've integrated the essence of many dangerous places in the sea-quelling painting into the trial of the Nine Palace Heaven. After you finish the trial of the Nine Palace Heaven, you've almost finished the dangerous places in the sea-quelling painting." Everyone couldn't help looking at Han Xian. Really? Even Han Fei looked at Han Xian in astonishment. I was wondering where the Nine Palace Heaven had so many exquisite trials. Did you get them from a sea-quelling painting? Han Xian said, if you want to find the secret of the sea-quelling painting, you may have to go to the Imperial Palace. But if you want it, everyone can take it out. Anyway, you can't find anything. You might as well give it to Han Fei. As a human majesty, if you can't even get this, you'll be too ashamed. Giggle, Hua Qinyue of the 100 Flowers Palace casually threw the sea-quelling painting to Han Fei. I've planted flowers in it. If you can't find anything, help me spread them in the future. Flowers will fill the world. Han Fei nodded. Okay, with a thought from Hong Yu, tens of thousands of corpses appear behind him, and he said with a dry smile, well, Your Majesty, refining corpses is an eyesore, so I didn't refine them in my origin sea. So I open up a bunch of graveyards in the sea-quelling painting. Take it and wipe out those graveyards. Zhao Xianglong nodded. My share should be in He Dao Yuan's hands. Han Fei said, He Dao Yuan has 6 shares. I brought them all. Sha Zhimeng threw out the sea-quelling painting. I've set up 9 layers of dreams inside. It shouldn't be difficult for you to break them, Your Majesty. Sha Zhimeng could appear here because Han Fei hadn't done anything yet. On the one hand, he couldn't do anything, and on the other hand, Sha Zhimeng had a very good reputation in the Dream Heaven. If he killed her, the people of the Dream Heaven would probably have a bad impression of Han Fei. But Sha Zhimeng still didn't have a good impression of Han Fei at all, because Han Fei killed her teacher, Wan Qingling. Old Lady Qiu threw out the sea-quelling painting. Your Majesty, these are all basic medicinal materials for cultivating mutated spiritual medicines. They're not good stuff. Your Majesty, you can deal with them yourself. Hearing this, Huang Jie snorted coldly. Mutated spiritual medicines? I think they're mutated poisons, right? Old Lady Qiu turned her head away. She didn't expect to bump into Huang Jie again. Now Huang Jie glared at her and taunted her every day. If it weren't for the human emperor, she might have been poisoned to death by Huang Jie. However, Han Fei didn't care how they fought. That was their own business. After a while, all 35 sea-quelling paintings were completed. Xia Xiaochan said, Isn't there still one left? Han Fei said, I'm going to search for a few days to see if I can find the 10-colored sky. If I can't find the 10-colored sky, the sea-quelling painting can't run away. Anyway, I'll find it eventually. The 3rd chapter. Please vote for me. This scroll will end in a few days. End of this chapter. Chapter 2111. The human race had returned to the land, and the situation of the 36 cities hadn't changed. However, everyone was now in the same land and had closer contact with each other. The Yin-Yang Heaven, the Pure Sun Sect, and the Moon Academy reopened. Xianfeng Wei led the witch pirates back to the Moon Academy, which was unexpected to everyone. Zhou Chun of the Misfortune Pirates, Chun Guangjia of the Gale Pirates, and Shui Ran of the Red Fire Pirates. Now they had disbanded their pirate groups and joined the Yin-Yang Heaven. The Mermaid Pirates returned to the Mermaid Royal Family and disappeared. The Immortal Pirates had disappeared after He Dao Yuan's immortal incarnation disappeared. The Divine Sect Pirates came from the undersea human race, and the remaining Peace Pirates really achieved his goal of peace. Because at this moment, he was the only one left of the top 10 pirate groups. At this point, the top 10 pirate groups in the chaotic vast sea only existed in name. The Thug Academy had now become an elite academy of the Pure Sun Sect. In the past, the Thug Academy only accepted students from the Yin-Yang Heaven. Now, as soon as the news of the opening of the 2 academies was released, people from the 36 main cities came. Of course, most people came for Han Fei's name. In fact, the 36 cities all had their own top academies, and countless people went to each academy when it opened. Now was not the time to determine the teaching power and teaching potential. After a few decades, when the new generation grew up, the major academies would slowly compete with each other. Just as the families were rebuilding the foundation of the human race and replanting the city, Han Fei was already hundreds of millions of kilometers away. Every day, Han Fei's route was always fixed. Even if the golden light leaping technique could make Han Fei's speed reach the limit. However, Han Fei didn't understand how to exceed this limit. But he knew that the limit of speed was not the real limit. If the upper limit of speed was fixed, then how could those who were stronger than the heaven-opening state compete? In that case, who in the heaven-opening stage would be able to escape when being hunted down and killed? Of course, at least in the heaven-opening state, Han Fei didn't have to worry. This was because not everyone had the physique and strength like him to be able to maintain a state of extreme speed. This was the 23rd day since Han Fei set off. With his speed and the nautical panorama, he had searched for a full 23 days. It could be seen how big the search range had become. It should be around here. The creatures around here are mostly algae and corals, so it's dangerous. Han Fei frowned slightly. He didn't find any danger nearby. However, he found it strange that he couldn't see such undersea jungles in the surrounding tens of millions of miles, but he saw them here, and the range was over 12 million miles. An area dominated by marine plants. In addition to the many marine plants, Han Fei also found some strange seaweeds here. Bug. Han Fei once found a whole nest of insects in the underground palace, and there were actually a lot of insects under the ground of this sea area. No, if there are a lot of insects here, why are there so many algae? These insects are reared by humans. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. Han Guanshu once told him that the 10-colored heaven would produce insect masters. Controlling insects was their main method of battle. From the looks of it, he should have already found the 10-colored sky. Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the nautical panorama appeared. After using it twice in a row, Han Fei used up the last chance of the day, and then he found a sealed undersea barrier. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. Since he was already here, why not go in? However, as Han Fei broke through the void and walked into this barrier, a colorful world appeared in front of him. Countless colorful sculptures were placed everywhere. There were colorful sea anemones, colorful jellyfish, weird sea dragons, starfish crawling everywhere, and many colorful shells with crystal shells. However, all of these were fake. They were all made up of a variety of colorful insects. Han Fei scanned with his senses, only to see a girl with colorful hair, blackish-purple lips, and blood-red eyelids were looking at him. The girl sat on a pink caterpillar and waved at Han Fei. "Long time no see." Han Fei took a deep breath and said incredulously, "Li Luo Luo?" Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. If he remembered correctly, Li Luo Luo never came out after entering the ideal palace. Judging from her appearance, the girl in front of him was clearly the same person as Li Luo Luo, who had multiple personalities, he knew. The girl shrugged slightly. "What? We haven't seen each other for only a few hundred years. Don't you recognize me?" Han Fei pointed and then looked around at the environment. This should have been an immortal palace before, but Li Luo Luo transformed it into what it was now. Han Fei couldn't help narrowing his eyes. "Are you the master of the 10-colored sky?" Li Luo Luo asked. "The master of the 10-colored sky?" Li Luo Luo shook her head. "She died long ago. I just inherited her immortal palace. There are constant wars in the outside world, and many emperors have died recently. As a girl, how dare I go out casually? I could only hide a little deeper, but you still found me. But I didn't expect it to be you." Han Fei frowned. He couldn't figure out Li Luo Luo's current aura. She should still be in the Pioneer Sea realm. However, the aura faintly emanating from her body seemed to have reached the end of the Pioneer Sea realm. Han Fei asked, "How did you enter the yin-yang heaven?" "To be precise, it was the projection of my clone." "When did you leave?" "Actually, I came out on the same day as you. However, everyone focused their attention on you, so no one paid attention to me. I mean, how did you leave the small world where the yin-yang heaven is located?" Li Luo Luo smiled. "Sacrifice. It was originally a clone of mine. I only needed to take the memory of this clone. I didn't care about the clone's life or death." Han Fei couldn't help but feel scared. In the past, there was a king lurking in the yin-yang heaven. Furthermore, with this clone, it could be said that he had traveled all over the yin-yang sky. "Ha ha. Don't be so serious. I don't mean anything bad. Everyone wants to go to the immortal palace. I went to the yin-yang heaven not to look for the immortal palace, but to find something." Han Fei was confused. "What are you looking for?" Li Luo Luo said, The 10-color heaven controls the Zerg clan in the world. Of course, it's different from the pure Zerg clan. Han Guanshu, the former master of the 9-palace heaven, took the time worm and the space worm from the 10-color heaven. These two worms could give people a certain amount of power, allowing them to walk in the chaos of time and space without any obstacles. And if you want to use them, you'll probably leave a time wormhole. The reason why I went to the Yin Yang heaven was mainly to find these two worms. But I didn't find anything. Worms that can walk in the chaos. Li Luoluo asked, "What do you think of?" Han Fei asked, "Where will they go?" Li Luoluo shrugged. "How would I know? The chaos is so big that there is no limit. It may be in a corner of the river of time. It may be in a node in space. It may be in a space in the river of time." When Han Guanshu and Jiang Linxian were not in the Yin Yang heaven, I knew they had probably entered the chaos. Han Fei seemed to understand something and couldn't help asking, "Then can the time worm and the space worm only allow one person to walk in the chaos?" Li Luoluo smiled and said, "Yes." Han Fei immediately understood something. Old Han didn't know if he swallowed the space worm, but he must have swallowed the time worm, so he could walk in time. But he and Ener couldn't. So he and Ener, he couldn't travel through time. That's why I stole time, or rather, Old Han and I intercepted the river of time together and sent me and Ener back. Han Fei's heart shook. He was thinking about how to find Old Han and the others, but then he met Li Luoluo, the hidden king. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Then do you still have the time worm?" Li Luoluo rolled her eyes. "If I did, would I have to find it?" Han Fei asked. "Then can you find these two worms? Can you trace them back to their current location?" Li Luoluo shook her head. "I can't find them, and it's impossible to find them. The treasures obtained by each palace are different, and there are only one or two of them. If you want to find them, you can only trace them back to history." Han Fei asked, "Have you found anything?" Li Luoluo replied, "Of course not. I was lucky enough to get some ancient books of insect masters in the Yin Yang heaven. They should have been left by Han Guanshu or Jiang Linxian to use the time worm and the space worm. You're not here to ask questions, are you? As an old friend, shouldn't you treat me to a meal?" The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "Is there anything to eat here? To eat worms?" Chapter 21:12. After a moment, Han Fei caught some very ordinary marine creatures and made a barbecue. The two sat opposite each other around the grill. Han Fei said, "I didn't expect you to still be alive and the master of the 10-color heaven. I didn't expect that you, who had just become a law enforcer, have already reached the sky-splitting realm. This speed of growth makes me seriously suspect that you are the reincarnation of a strong master." Han Fei smiled and said, "If I am a reincarnation, how strong will my real body be?" The two chatted for a while, and Li Luoluo said, "The 10-color heaven no longer exists. I died here. I'm not someone from the 10-colored sky either. I was just lost here, and in the end, I cultivated my reincarnation, which is why I walked this path." Han Fei couldn't help asking, "What about your multiple personalities?" Li Luoluo took a deep look at Han Fei. Her pupils changed, and her tone suddenly changed. "Brother, long time no see. Wow, Li Kiki?" Han Fei immediately took a breath. "Let me ask you, how did you change so fast?" Han Fei was speechless. "Li Kiki, why don't we call Li Luoluo back?" "Brother, she is already a king. Multiple personalities can be shared with each other. So, it's the same whether she comes out or not." Han Fei had felt that there was something wrong with Li Luoluo, and Li Kiki was definitely not as innocent as she looked. Now that he looked at it, he realized that it was a projection of a king, and his acting was just like the real thing. At this moment, seeing the appearance of the 10-color heaven, Han Fei couldn't help saying, "Since there is no one in the 10-color heaven, what are you doing here alone?" "To take refuge," Li Kiki said in a delicate voice. "It's too terrible outside. A king dies every few days. I'm just a girl. How dare I go there? Come back." Han Fei's face turned black. Li Kiki was really good at deceiving people in the past. Now that Han Fei knew that she was a king, how could he be deceived by her again? Sure enough, seeing that Han Fei couldn't stand it anymore, Li Kiki turned back into Li Luoluo. She said, "So many of you are fighting so hard, but I am the only one in the 10-color heaven. Why should I participate in this chaotic world again? You didn't come all the way here just to reminisce with me, did you?" Han Fei said straightforwardly, "I'm here for the sea-quelling painting. It should be with you, right?" "Here." Li Luoluo didn't deny it. Han Fei had already found this place. If she said she wasn't here, Han Fei wouldn't believe her. So, she took out the sea-quelling painting and said, "This thing is not very useful. This is where I nurture my spirit insects. I'll give it to you if you want." Han Fei accepted it without hesitation. He had come all this way for this sea-quelling painting. Putting away the sea-quelling painting, Han Fei said, "Now, the chaotic battles in the chaotic ocean have come to an end. The 36 immortal palaces of the human race have been unified. From now on, it will no longer fall apart. So, are you interested in returning?" Li Luoluo shook her head slightly. "There's no need to return. I'm the only one left in the 10-colored sky. If there's a chance, I'll go to a place ruled by humans to take a look. Of course, if you won't leave the chaotic ocean, I'm still willing to go." Han Fei knew he would definitely leave. Li Luo's background was unknown, and she was a very special insect master, which was very dangerous. If he was right, her strength should not be low. It was not necessarily a good thing for such a person to stay in the chaotic ocean. So Han Fei said, "In the next 100 years, you'd better pay attention to the movements of the human race. When I'm about to leave the chaotic ocean, I hope you can come too." Li Luoluo knew that Han Fei had some concerns, so she nodded slightly. "I will." Han Fei didn't reminisce with Li Luoluo, because there was nothing to reminisce about. If Li Luoluo didn't come, he would come to her again. Anyway, he had to take this woman away from the chaotic ocean. After Han Fei left, Li Luoluo said to herself, "It seems that I can't stay in the chaotic ocean any longer. You can even find this place. It can be seen that the nautical instrument is really powerful. It's a pity that I can't find the time worm and the space worm." Then Li Luoluo changed her voice to Li Keeks. "If you can't find it for the time being, forget it. Anyway, Han Fei may go to find Han Guanshu and Jiang Linxian in the future. It's safer for him to take the risk than for us to find them in the Chaos Ocean." Then she heard another voice. "Then do you want to go out with him? In fact, we can also go out by offering sacrifices." Li Kiki sneered. "Do you really think there are no strong masters in the chaotic ocean? If we really offer sacrifices, how can the one behind us remain indifferent? Let's go out with him then. Although Han Fei doesn't trust us, at least we can get to know him, which is much better than being strangers. If he can find Han Guanshu and Jiang Linxian in the future, it will save us unnecessary disputes." Li Luoluo nodded. "Okay, let's do that." 1 month later, somewhere in the sea, one scroll after another appeared in front of Han Fei. The scrolls were pieced together and soon formed a huge painting of mountains and rivers of the world. "This can't be the Emperor's origin sea." When Han Fei saw this painting, he immediately came to this conclusion. Tai Yuan and the Sword God didn't know, but he knew that the Emperor's origin sea had already turned into a star. If it was the Emperor's origin sea, then this sea-quelling painting should be a sphere when pieced together. However, no matter how Han Fei tried to piece it together, the gap between the head and the tail was not adjacent, which obviously didn't conform to the state of turning into a star. Since it was not the Emperor's origin sea, this thing couldn't be Chu Hao's origin sea. Others couldn't understand the sea-quelling painting because they didn't have the demon purification pot, but Han Fei had it, which was the real reason why he was determined to find the sea-quelling painting. Therefore, when this painting appeared and was pieced together, a message immediately appeared in his eyes. Name, Universe Boundary Map, Introduction. This map is a primitive universe boundary map drawn by a strong master based on the heart of the sea realm. It can also be called the Chaotic Domain Map. The star sea is also chaotic, and the stars in the map are like grains of sand. Each grain is a world. The red star is dangerous. The yellow star has been destroyed. The dark star is mostly the starting place, and the other heterochromatic stars are all demon stars. This map can seal and collect the aura of the Great Way. Quality, high-quality divine artifact, unrefined. remarks, "The great ways in the map are the special aura of the great way collected by the painter when he explored the star sea." After reading the description, Han Fei couldn't help but take a breath. Universe boundary map? Is it the star sea that I opened up when I opened the sky? It seemed that although this map was a divine artifact, its real function was a map. It was like a treasure map, except that this was the universe map of the chaotic sea. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Old Yuan, is the star sea the chaotic sea?" The old turtle replied, "You can understand it that way because the star sea and the origin sea is a part of the chaotic sea. The strong masters go to the chaotic sea to find the starting place, which is actually in the star sea. Because once the sky is opened, the star sea is grafted there." The old turtle asked, "Is this map related to the chaotic sea?" In the sea-quelling painting, Han Fei raised his head. When night fell, the starry sky shone. In an instant, he was stunned by the starry river that filled the sky. Before, because he didn't know, he only saw it as a starry sky. Then, Han Fei's vision had changed. This was no longer as simple as a starry sky, but a sea that contained the chaotic sea and the starry sky. Here, each star was a world. One world after another formed the star sea. Just when Han Fei was in shock, the old turtle said, "Oh, so this is the star sea map? Just how powerful did the person who drew it have to be able to draw this sea of stars?" Han Fei's heart did a flip. In this case, when he went to get the origin water, didn't he already enter the star sea? Han Fei observed the star sea map. A large number of bright yellow stars were flashing, among which about 20% were red stars, or dark stars. He didn't seem to see them. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, how can I find the starting place here?" "You can also find the starting place in this map. This is just a map." He drew the Chaos Sea map, but it doesn't mean that the world in this map is chaotic sea. This is just a map in the star sea. If there is a starting place, the old turtle couldn't help but be shocked. If there is a starting place, then this starting place must have not been explored. It is also covered by the chaotic mist. That is to say, if you find a starting place here, then you can also find it in the real star sea, and it is the kind of starting place that has not been explored. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. So, this map is actually very amazing, right? Han Fei glanced around, and he really didn't see the so-called dark star. However, it was said that it was a dark star, so it was probably not something that could be seen with the naked eye. As for how to see it, Han Fei still needed to think about it. "I can't roam the chaotic sea, but can I roam a map?" Han Fei felt that he still had a lot of time to study this star sea. Besides, he still had the nautical panorama. Han Fei wanted to point the nautical panorama to a random dark star on this map. Sure enough, Han Fei soon saw that the nautical panorama pointed to the vicinity of a red star. Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim, "This is the real treasure." Chapter 21:13. The Imperial Palace. After finding the sea-quelling painting and knowing its secrets, Han Fei came to the Imperial Palace again. If an ordinary person came, the Imperial Palace would definitely not open it, nor would there be any response. But Han Fei and Chu Hao had an agreement. Han Fei's purpose of coming here would only be to leave the chaotic ocean in the future. So Han Fei soon felt the fog rising. In the fog, an iron tower-like brawny man walked out. This was Chu Hao's puppet and could be regarded as the guardian of the Imperial Palace. Meeting him was no different from meeting Chu Hao. Sure enough, the puppet said, "Are you ready to leave the chaotic ocean?" Han Fei said, "Anyway, it won't be too late. The enemies here have been eliminated. It's useless to stay here for thousands of years." Chu Hao said unhurriedly, "Your speed is faster than I imagined. What do you want to ask me today?" Han Fei asked, "First of all, apart from you and the Beast King, are there any other emperors secretly protecting the chaotic ocean? It seems that you have a lot of ideas in mind." Chu Hao said, "Do you know what kind of position the chaotic vast ocean has in the ocean realm?" Han Fei. Chu Hao said, "The sea realm is huge and can accommodate thousands of clans. In the past, after the gods fell, The masters of thousands of clans constantly opened up the chaotic sea and searched for the starting ground in order to become gods. The starting ground is rare, so the masters of thousands of clans must fight for it. The chaotic ocean used to be a starting ground. The so-called starting ground is some undeveloped and unknown areas that haven't been integrated into the sea realm. The chaotic ocean was excavated in the chaotic wasteland. However, not all of the starting grounds could be easily taken away. The chaotic ocean is such a place. Later, for unknown reasons, or maybe the means of a certain master, it fell into the chaotic wasteland and is difficult to find. Even if it is found, people will only think it is a primitive graveyard. Maybe they will explore it, but generally they don't have much hope. Chaotic wasteland? Primitive graveyard? When Han Fei killed the Sea Realm masters of the Frogman clan, they talked about this term. Chu Hao said, "The chaotic wasteland is a territory of the Sea Realm. In the beginning, it might have been an ancient battlefield in the chaotic sea. Then, the battlefield collapsed and fell into the Sea Realm, finally forming the chaotic wasteland. There are many primitive graveyards buried here. You can think of it as the starting ground that has been cleaned. The primitive graveyard did not mean that there were no living beings or races living in it. In fact, there are many people who roam the primitive graveyard all year round, searching for opportunities in the ruins. You can think of them as wasteland scavengers." Wasteland scavenger? Therefore, the few people that he had killed previously should have been scavenging in the chaotic wasteland, right? What does this have to do with whether or not the chaotic Azure Sea is protected by an emperor? Chu Hao said, "Don't be anxious. There were rules in the primal chaos wasteland. For example, the family that had enmity with the Merfolk royal family had tried to invade this place many times. Do you really think a remnant of my soul and that ape can stop them? That ape may have entered the Emperor realm, but he still has a long way to go." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Who is that?" Chu Hao said, "There are also extremely powerful scavengers. Although anyone can break into the chaotic wasteland and look for opportunities. However, if an emperor comes in and destroys it at will, how can ordinary people scavenge?" "Hiss, you mean some powerful beings among the scavengers are helping us?" Chu Hao shook his head. "Not necessarily. It's possible that they are interested in this primitive land and want to nurture it and harvest it slowly." Han Fei couldn't help but frown. If such a powerful being wanted to harvest the chaotic Azure Sea, what should he do? Chu Hao said, "You don't have to worry too much. If he really wanted to harvest it, he would have done it long ago. The chaotic Azure Sea must be a bit special. Since the inheritance of the Void Temple can be found here, it means that there are probably some special strong masters protecting this place, or they may be from the Void Temple. It's also because of this that I chose to perish here." Han Fei asked, "How big is the wasteland? Are there many strong masters?" Chu Hao said, "As for how big it is, there are always a lot of people in a place like the chaotic Azure Sea. After you go out, you'll find that the Sea Realm is really very big. Even I dare not say that I have explored all of the Sea Realm. Of course, although it's big, there are not many famous ones. You'll get used to it when you go out." Han Fei nodded slightly. "Will I be hunted when I go out?" Chu Hao chuckled. "Do you think they are so free that they will come to hunt you? The chaotic Azure Sea, because of its unknown particularity, people don't like to pay attention to it at all, unless someone brazenly invades and runs amok in the scavenger's territory. Do you think anyone will be willing to care?" Han Fei was slightly relieved. As long as he was not hunted as soon as he went out, it would be fine. From the conversation just now, Han Fei indirectly learned that there should be no problem with Beast Kings, but Beast Kings didn't seem powerful in Chu Hao's eyes. Han Fei then said, "In addition to some things in the outside world, I also want to know the function of the sea-quelling painting. Have you collected all of them?" Chu Hao said calmly, "If it's that thing, it's not an ordinary item. When I obtained the demon refining gore back then, I picked it up along the way. It is a map of the Sea of Stars. I'm the Sea of Stars in your origin sea, but it is not marked completely, and only a very small part of the place is marked. The real Sea of Stars, the brilliant galaxy, is not something that can be drawn by a map. However, The level of this map is not low. It can draw such a realm. Even if it is not a god, it may not be far from being a god. So, if you wander in it, maybe you'll find a few starting lands. But I advise you to be careful. The starting lands are not easy to get. While it represents endless resources, it may also represent great danger. Han Fei thought for a while and nodded slightly. At least, Chu Hao did not deceive him. As for whether he should find the starting lands or not, he would have to wait until he walked out of the chaotic wasteland. Even Chu Hao, as a venerable emperor, said that the sea realm was vast and there were many strong people. So, if he went out, the first thing he should do was to adapt to it. Only by adapting to it could he be qualified to talk about other things. Presumably, when Chu Xiaohongzhu met the family, she also wanted to lead the people of her family to choose a place to settle down. Unexpectedly, she was cheated by the family. Therefore, no matter when, it was definitely not good to rely on others. To forge iron, one had to be strong himself. All external help could only be considered as help at most. 3 months later, Thug Academy. Xia Xiaochan and the others chose to live in the Thug Academy temporarily. During this time, they mainly consulted Han Fei about the blind spots of the sea expansion realm. Because they could learn from Han Fei, it saved them a lot of time on the road to the sea expansion realm. Now, they were exploring the Origin Sea every day, crazily exploring at all costs. From the Grand Purity Palace and the Wuji Heaven, each of them gained a lot. During the 200 years when Han Fei hid his identity, they just used up all the resources they had, and the Origin Sea was less than 30,000 kilometers wide. Now that they had a new batch of resources, they naturally used them to explore the Origin Sea. Han Fei estimated that without 1,000 years and enough resources, it would be very difficult for them to reach the limit of the sea expansion realm so quickly. With the resources of their current Origin Sea, it would be hard for them to explore 50,000 kilometers. Therefore, everyone was actually waiting for Xia Xiaochan to give birth. When Xia Xiaochan gave birth, it wouldn't be long before Han Fei would definitely leave. They were all cultivators. It was true that children were important, but on the path of cultivation, how could they stop advancing just because they had children? On the contrary, it was because after having a child, they would have a stronger motivation. The stronger he was, the better he could protect his child. Perhaps because Han Fei was also anxious, on this day, Han Fei decided to take Xia Xiaochan to his Origin Sea to accelerate the pregnancy. Now, in his Origin Sea, 1 year of cultivation was equivalent to 256 years. Maybe after staying in his Origin Sea for a year, a child would be born. Xia Xiaochan asked, "Isn't this too fast?" "I'm not ready yet." Han Fei shrugged. "You can't really prepare for 180 years, right? Besides, after cultivating for 180 years in my Origin Sea, we may be able to go to the outside world for another 800 years. Xia Xiaochan thought it made sense, so she said, "Let's go. Have you prepared enough resources?" Han Fei smiled. Of course. Therefore, in Han Fei's Origin Sea, he saw a huge amount of energy rolling towards Xia Xiaochan every day. Han Fei couldn't help but click his tongue. She hadn't even been born yet, and she was already eating like this. How would she eat after she was born? She couldn't afford to raise her. However, after only staying in the Origin Sea for 3 days, Han Fei felt that his head was about to explode, and the aura of the Great Way in his Origin Sea was all gone. And the chaotic energy and the immortal spiritual energy were also running out. Han Fei even found that there was time power pouring into Xia Xiaochan's body. F***CK. On the 3rd day, not only Han Fei's head was about to explode, but so was Xia Xiaochan's. She said, "Is my baby eating too much? I feel that there are a lot of complicated forces pouring into my body, and my lifespan is shrinking rapidly. I'm afraid that nearly 10,000 years have been taken away." What? Han Fei was shocked when he heard this. How come Xia Xiaochan's lifespan is being absorbed again? Didn't she just eat a chaotic green lotus? Let's go. Let's get out. Outside, Luren Quang was arguing with Old Bai and the others about their realms. Seeing Han Fei and the others come out, he couldn't help but be surprised. "Didn't you just go in? Why are you out again?" Han Fei said with a black face. Go ahead. Han Fei's heart sank. Isn't this a trap? What if my vitality is being devoured again? A chaotic green lotus is not enough? Where can I find such a treasure?